Welcome to your in-depth astrology overview and zodiac forecast for September 2024. I'm going to share briefly some standout details to look out for at the start of this month, and also the event chart, which provides a backdrop that we can all collectively relate to and will be a big influence throughout the whole of September. But then, please stay with me. I will go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. On the 1st, Pluto returns back to Capricorn. The 3rd, we have a new moon in the practical sign of Virgo. But in the first week of this month, the thrusting energies of Mars are conflicted by the dreamy energies of Neptune, which could take the edge off the virtue that new moon wants to create. Also, the sun goes on a couple of days later to be met by the stern energies of Saturn in the sign of Pisces. And we get a bit of a theme going. The sign of Virgo is very much about refinements, about trying to get everything to work very efficiently. And the energies that we have, both in the sign of Gemini, but also in the sign of Pisces, which opposes the sun's journey through this part of the sky, is just going to ask us to try to create a more homogeneous, holistic balance between how we feel about things, the things that we haven't dealt with, the resentments, the frustrations, and perhaps the subconscious energies that are so potent with Pisces, because the reformations that the sun in Virgo wants us to achieve are really going to be under pressure otherwise. And yet, ironically, Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, returns home on the 9th for its second visit this year and emerges from the post-retrograde shadow on the 11th. Now on the 18th, we have the first in a new eclipse series, this time in the sign of Pisces, very close to Neptune. And it's Neptune that's afflicting the sun through the following few days. But that brings us to the autumnal equinox of the 22nd. But this does trine up to Pluto despite its return to Capricorn in a disassociate way. And as the month comes to a close, the opportunity to have dialogue, reach accords, is certainly increased, if challenged somewhat by Venus's arrival in Scorpio on the 23rd, where she's not at her best. But Mercury replaces Venus in Libra on the 26th and crests into a gorgeous, glorious cazimi with the sun as the month comes to a close. So if we want to, if we're available, if we're prepared to listen, some of the frustrations and perhaps entrapments that we may feel earlier in the month can be resolved. It really depends on our unique personal approach to this month. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, you know I very much appreciate you. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it thrive. Click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. I'm a consulting astrologer. If you'd like to talk to me one-to-one, check out what other people have found working with me and read my testimonials below. And finally, if you'd like to take advantage of your year 2025 personal horoscope forecast, completely unique to you and your birth data, you can order it now, get the rest of this year free, but also 30% off, and your life roadmap report, which will give you searing insights into the patterns that are played out in your life so far. Please see the link below for more. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, we need to be mindful of the two luminaries, the sun and the moon. The sun in Virgo is in the 9th degree, therefore coming to the end of the first decan, sub-ruled by the ruler of this sign, Mercury. So how we communicate is going to be critically important. But the moon is in the sign of Leo, which gives it some pridefulness. It's forging a pretty lovely link to Jupiter, to be honest. So that suggests that there can be some warmth in the mix. And what Venus, the planet of relating, is doing in its trine to Pluto before Pluto reverses into Capricorn later on the first day, is saying to us, look, if we've got really meaningful relationships, or we have a meaningful approach, a sincere approach to relationships, we're going to get a lot more from this month. But you know, there is a gotcha, because Saturn is lurking in the celestial long grass. It's in Pisces, in the 12th house, but it is squaring up with Jupiter. So we got the planet of stop is influencing the planet of go. And that creates a bit of a stalemate, or does it? It's possible that with Jupiter still in Gemini over the next near to a year, that our desire to communicate quickly needs to be balanced against what Saturn's trying to teach us about really working hard about how we feel about things, embracing the emotional and psychological domain, not feeling hung up about vulnerabilities, owning where we might not feel so assured, because that actually is going to help us to integrate ourselves in a month when integration could prove challenging. So as much as we can have the conversations, we need to make sure they are meaningful conversations. And that's where that link between Pluto and Venus is actually such a help at the start of this month. But what about Venus's opposition to Neptune? You can see that Neptune's on the anaretic point, just very, very close to coming to the end of its 164-year cycle. It's going to sweep into Aries briefly next year, but its opposition to Venus suggests something can capture our imagination. And with Pluto supportive to Neptune, ironically, we may be captivated and it may feel very powerful. But what's the value of it? And that's where Pluto's rulership of Taurus really comes into play. And also you can see that Uranus in Taurus is in a square in a right angle with Mercury. It's pretty broad, but as we go into this month, we have a repetition of the electric energy we had between the two of them at the heart of August. So we could find ourselves feeling very rebellious if someone tries to impose their values or standards on our relationship or approach, or on our spending decisions. So as much as Venus is enchanted by the power of Pluto, Neptune's there, suggesting that there could be some opaque temptations which may not be quite so good for us. So by the 3rd, we have that new moon in the sign of Virgo. Now, ordinarily, the new moon in Virgo is a chance to set our intentions around virtue. It's where we can apply those graduated gains. So in other words, do lots of small but important things that improve our lot. Now that can be around our life organisation, what we eat and drink and consume in terms of nutrients, the amount of exercise we get. It can be where we want to make some changes around our work, the 6th house, and generally give our physical vitality a boost by feeling more fulfilled. But the 6th house can be where we support others in a practical way. It can also be our love of animals and pets in particular. And that particular new moon is supported gloriously by the part of fortune. However, on the 4th, Mars moves out of the quick-witted Gemini, where it has created quite a lot of controversy, and moves into the more protective sign of Cancer. And this is going to be a very unusual transit because it's going to go on for 8 weeks. Normally, Mars transits take 6, but because Mars is going to be moving into Leo in November, but then going into a retrograde, we've got a change of pattern. And Mars in Cancer is in its fall, so it can be a little prickly and defensive, so we just need to be mindful of that. But also, we have right at the start of this month a square between Mars and Neptune. So as Mars gets to the end of its journey through the sign of Gemini, the shimmering vibe of Neptune, which affects Venus at the start of this month, imposes its will on Mars. So as much as we can have those conversations, we need to be really clear about what our motivations are from the conversations. Because with Saturn, like Neptune in the 12th house, we could be kidded by the things that we're yearning if we're not quite sure of why we yearn for them. So our deeper motivations and those of other people are critical at this early part of the month. But also from the 5th through to the 10th, the Sun's going to go face to face with Saturn in Pisces. If we think of Pisces energy, it's the sign of total culmination, but particularly because Saturn rules time itself, and also is the planet of karma, and also in the sign of Pisces can be a very cool, repressive influence around our feelings. If there is something that we're not quite recognizing in terms of our feelings or our psychology, that can play out in terms of too much of a perfectionist attitude through the Virgo energy, especially from the new moon, or an intolerance, or an inflexibility, even though they're both mutable signs. So we need to be aware that if something around us doesn't feel right, the way that we ventilate that could be through being a bit picky or critical of the people we encounter. Also, our physical vitality could hit a little bit of a flat spot, particularly around the 8th, with that particular opposition. But if you are someone who's really interested in personal development, in understanding your deeper emotions, but also working on the physical realm, getting some healthy treatments, eating the right type of nutrients, getting the appropriate amount of exercise, then you can find a holistic blend of the two polarities that the sign of Virgo and Pisces create. But what about that journey of Mars into Cancer? Well, one of the things we can use, the activity of Mars and the drive and the passion, is to make some physical changes to where we live. So if that means building something, using the force of Mars in a constructive way, changing some part of our home, perhaps decoratively. Mars is usually much more to do with some kind of physical activity. Perhaps it's a great time to put a video on the TV and do some exercise in the comfort of your home. But we also have, as I mentioned before, the peaking of that square between Mercury and Uranus. That's on the 7th. So there's quite a lot of contra energies as we come into this month, for sure. Or are we oversharing with Neptune in the mix? We're leaky. And that leakiness actually comes from not having the right balance between the practical and more tangible parts of life and those more spiritual, psychological and subconscious strands that come from Pisces. That's going to be tested to destruction. And if there is something that isn't working very well in your life, that could be quite a challenge. We could find that people do feel very emotional around that time, or they do find that they're very reactive in some kind of way. So we need to be mindful of that, to be honest. But then on the 22nd, we get the autumnal equinox. Now, I get very excited about the cardinal quadrants because really they're the basis of Western tropical astrology. Of course, the critics would say, well, look, sidereal astrology shows a shift of 23 degrees. That's where the astrology really is. But in fact, the sidereal and Western tropical astrology were aligned when Western tropical astrology was first predicated on the vernal equinox. So if you are in the south, for you, of course, it is the spring equinox. But in terms of the astrology, to be honest, it is a Mediterranean construct. So in other words, it is what it is. There are some people who do believe that you can flip the signs based on the equator. But the approach I have is more traditional to Western tropical astrology. So this ushers in a 13-week period where balance, negotiation, compromise, give and take, trying to find the middle ground, all those very tangible Libran energies is very much to the fore. Ironically, the ruler of the sign of Libra says au revoir the next day and dives deep into the psychological sign of Scorpio. But it's also saying there, look, if I've got a relationship that really means something to me, I'm going to be possessive about it, or I want to get more intimate with the person that I'm really drawn to. And another irony that we have is that the autumnal equinox does forge a trine to Pluto newly in Capricorn. It's just a disassociate trine. So it's essentially saying, if we can listen, be attentive to what other people feel and how their views may not necessarily conform with ours, but we can find some middle ground in this world which is so hugely polarized. And of course, because Pluto through this month is inching back towards that US natal Pluto, we are getting some kind of reconstruction to the big picture that's going on in society, but very polarized. So the sign of Libra pushes back against that polarization and asks us to find some points of commonality. We all need to eat and drink. We need some kind of human support. We're not islands. Mercury, the planet of communication, joins in on the 26th by getting its energies working brilliantly in Libra. So if you have found that someone's been out of touch or communications have been quite strained through the whole 10-week period of the pre-retrograde, retrograde and post-retrograde period, I feel that the communication can definitely get easier as this month comes to a close. And then on the 30th, the month ends with a celebratory moment. We have the Mercury cazimi, the Sun and Mercury align in a superior conjunction. And that means that the energy of Mercury, which is quick and darting and flexing and can be cheeky, even a little bit naughty, what we can have is the Sun glows it up. We have more radiance for Mercury's virtues. So some of this month I feel the imperfections, either with ourselves or those people around us or with our jobs, or how we feel about our personal image, or how we feel about the practical dimensions of our life, or if we're judging and being harsh on our vulnerabilities in terms of the emotional side of life, we get an opportunity to find a sweet spot of balance as this month draws to a close. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Don't forget to check out that year 2025 special horoscope forecast offer, but please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs. Welcome Aries to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm briefly going to outline some standout developments for you this month, but please stay with me. I'll then share on the screen your event chart. This provides a lot of telling information, which provides a backdrop for the whole of September, but then I'll go through each of the important ingresses and planetary alignments as the month unfolds. Now, as the month begins, your ruler Mars is coming to the end of a journey through Gemini. It's been controversial because of its link in the middle of last month to Jupiter. That certainly was giving you an opportunity to articulate a message. But they were clashing with Saturn too, still making its way through its retrograde in the deep part of your situation, the 12th house. And indeed, as you come into this month, Mars is actually in a right angle, your ruler, with Neptune, like Saturn in your 12th house. So however much we have the conversation, what's the true motives behind it? That's really a bit of a theme at the start of the month. We have a new moon on the 3rd, brilliant if you want to be much more practical and find some ways to become more virtuous and efficient in your approach. But we also have your ruler beginning an extended 8-week journey through the sign of Cancer from the 4th. Now that's a very important development. Usually Mars takes 6 weeks to go through each zodiac sign. Now we are going to have some tension this month between energy in the 12th house, very much to do with the psychological, the emotional, the spiritual, but sometimes the subconscious, and also the energy of the sun making its way through that more pragmatic 6th house. And that is going to be something you will have to work out this month. But we also have on the 22nd the autumnal equinox. The sun powers into Libra, your opposite sign, and that flags up a 13-week period which is incredibly important for relationships. As the month draws to a close, there is going to be a very special event which can help your pursuit around improving understanding in all sorts of interactions, so I can't wait to share that with you too. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, you're very welcome to share any comments. This is very much a community. If you're returning, it's lovely to have you with me here again. If you've yet to subscribe, please help the channel to thrive and click that subscription button, but also the bell notification symbol. If you'd like to chat with me in a consultation one-to-one, it's a major part of what I do. Please check out my testimonials below to discover how other people have experienced working with me. And if you'd like to take advantage of my year 2025 very special and unique personal horoscope forecast offer, you can order that now. I'll give you the rest of 24 free. You'll get 30% off, but also your life roadmap report, which will give you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far and how you can steer your future more effectively future forwards. Please see the link below for more. So on the screen now, I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the month. Now, we do need to be mindful of your ruler Mars, of course, but let's just take a look at the position of the luminaries, the sun and also the moon. The sun, as I mentioned in the introduction, makes its way through the first 3 weeks of this month through the sign of Virgo. Virgo is about virtue. It's about making sure that things are working well and also making sure that the physical realm is very well structured and disciplined. And it's a brilliant location if we do want to get a bit fitter, maybe take a look at our diet, on our nutrition, or perhaps even think about changing our jobs, because the 6th house is very much where we can be of service to others. But of course we need to be of service to ourselves. And as you come into this month, the moon is in the very warm and buoyant sign of Leo, which shares your fire tropicity. And in fact, the moon is linking back to Jupiter, the planet of optimism, in a very bubbly way as you come into this month. So I feel there can be a sense of optimism right at the start of September. But let's just take a look at Mars. Mars is coming to the end of its journey through Gemini, as I mentioned, and on the 4th makes its way into Cancer, which is very much about how we feel about things. But if you look at the position of Neptune, like Saturn, in that 12th house. Neptune's a shimmering link, and it can in some ways distort our reality. And Mars in the 3rd house can be our ideas, but it can also be our physical movements, particularly in Gemini, quick physical movements. So it's possible that you could react to something right at the start of this month where the information that you're basing your actions upon is somehow or another a little bit faulty. And if you look at the position of Venus, which for you is absolutely delicious, she's in a home sign of Libra, very much about relating. So that gives you, particularly in its link to Pluto, an awesome chance to build alliances this month with people who share your values, and perhaps around friendship groups, or perhaps someone that you're friendly with now can become something more. Not necessarily romantic, but certainly someone much more meaningful in your life. The problem is Mars squaring up to Venus, it's a disassociate square, can see us attracted to do something which isn't necessarily right for us. So in other words, Venus is opposed by Neptune. So as much as Pluto can help to give you desire and certainly transform your relationships in its link to Venus at the start of this month. Just be aware that whatever decisions you're thinking of making are based on very clear facts. So, for example, if you're a little bit confused about how you feel about someone, as much as that moon link back to Jupiter could make you think the best and extend some credit to someone, it is important that you're not too trusting. Also, you can see that Saturn, like Neptune in the 12th house, which can flag up some anxieties or inhibitions, is in a square to Jupiter. So the third house is compromised in your situation. That's how you think, how you express your ideas, how you move around, with those two players in the long grass in your 12th house, which isn't always obvious energy of the sign of Pisces. So the other thing I'd be mindful of, if you're talking to someone about something, whether it is a shared project, whether it's a business idea, whether it's a partnership, someone might not tell you everything that you need to know. They may not be withholding information in a sinister way. Perhaps it's more to do, in a sense, for them of being a bit more protective and they're being guarded. Also, the other thing that can happen here is that perhaps your history and your experiences are in some ways influencing your future too powerfully. So once Mars moves into the sign of Cancer, it gives you an opportunity to perhaps look at some of those emotional issues. But on the 3rd, we do have the new moon in the sign of Virgo. Now, for us all, collectively, it's a great chance to declutter, do a little bit of spring cleaning. Okay, I know it's the wrong time of the year, but you get my drift. If there is some stuff that's built up that we no longer need, we know that creating space works very energetically as well. We can feel better about ourselves. If we've been putting off going to a routine checkup, say for example the dentist, 6th house energy, awesome for that too. So set your intentions on that new moon around anything where you can bring some gradual but important, and perhaps on the face of it, small changes which add up to something much more significant. But by the 5th and through to the 10th, the Sun goes opposite the mighty Saturn. The Sun in the sign of Virgo, asking you to find those ways to improve things, could suddenly hit a little bit of an energetic crisis. You may find that you're thrust to change some part of your life, even though the new moon is cheering you on, isn't quite there. It's harder to gain traction. So if you find that your physical vitality does dip down a little bit through the 4th or the 5th through to about the 10th, try to take this in your stride. It may also seem that people keep raising unexpected objections that don't really seem to be very relevant, and that could be very irritating, because remember, the sign of Virgo likes things to be neat and tidy, and when things don't work, that can prove to be frustrating. Also, when it comes to your professional situation, just be aware of who hasn't got your back. I don't want you to be overly anxious about what this month holds, but just be conscious that sometimes politics do have a role, and even if we're being very productive, efficient, applied, dedicated, and also making sure that we're fulfilling our obligations in a very precise way, or Virgo, someone else could, Saturn and Neptune, make some subtle criticisms, but not necessarily directly to you. Now, there's an electric energy at the start of the month. As the month moves forwards from the 4th to the 10th, that's really starting to pick up, and it becomes exact on the 7th, so at the end of the first week. If you do find yourself feeling a bit impulsive about resources, that could be a little bit of a hint. So Mars moving on the 4th into Cancer for that extended 8-week period is an interesting one. Mars is technically in its full FALL in the sign of Cancer. One of the things we can get with Mars in Cancer is a bit of grumpiness. maybe a little bit of defensiveness, but it also can give you an opportunity to find the push, along with the sun in the reform in 6th house, to make those physical changes at home. So if you have been wanting to refit something or renovate something or upcycle something, that's a good combination, to be honest. If you are someone who would like to start a home-based business that offers services in your local community, Mars moving into Cancer and the new moon energy coming from the sun in Virgo are very helpful to you, as long as you're aware of those potential gotchas that lie in the more subconscious realm with Saturn and Neptune. And perhaps in some ways, Aries, what's coming up for me, might you at times be tempted to self-sabotage yourself, be too self-critical, let your own insecurities, Saturn and Neptune in the 12th house, get in the way of the amount of physical vitality and energy that you can manifest. Do watch out for that, because I feel that is not going to be good for you. But we also have the arrival of Mercury back in the sign of Virgo on the 9th. Now that's good, because something you may have tried to do, and it may have been a creative project that was important to you. I feel there's been a sense, because of Mercury rewinding from Virgo back into Leo, that it didn't quite gain traction. You may have had to make some amendments, rethink in some ways. Mercury arriving back into Virgo can start to see you gaining that traction. And also on the 11th, as Mercury emerges from its post-retrograde shadow, something that's really been a niggle over the previous 10 weeks can finally come to a close. But at the heart of this month, we do have a very complex opposition between the Sun and also Neptune. Where Saturn can be a very cold, restraining energy in its opposition to the Sun, so it can affect us by feeling a little bit less warm and affectionate, Neptune is much harder in some ways to diagnose. It dissolves. And because the 12th house is that part of your situation where maybe you're not completely aware of some of the things that bug you, you may be pushed in some ways to become more conscious of them, because a sense of anxiety could take hold at this part of the month. And that brings us to a complex full moon, which is also a lunar eclipse, and it's the first in a new series. We've had a series going on, and we've still got it going on, between the signs of Aries and also Libra. So we've got another solar eclipse coming on the 2nd of October. We've got another solar eclipse coming in your sign next year in the spring. So what we get here for you in terms of the polarity, we're emphasizing the 12th house where the moon position is, and it's pretty close to Neptune, and that 6th house position. So if something is out of kilter and you're not getting a kind of holistic join up in terms of your overall health or well-being or sense of goodness in your situation, some kind of adjustment may be needed. But with Neptune in the mix, you may be tempted to some escapism. You may be drawn towards some things that are quite habitual in your life that give you some kind of release from the bruising reality of everyday life, because we all know that demands just seem to get higher and higher. Or it's possible that you could go the spiritual route and really try to embrace the things that aren't necessarily physically obvious, but once we embrace them, the physical realm really changes. And that's going to be your opportunity over the next 6 months with this particular event, if you really seize the moment. But on the 22nd, we have the autumnal equinox, and this ushers in Western tropical astrology the sun into the sign of Libra. So for the next 13 weeks, it's all about balance, it's all about relationships, but critically it's all about developing our listening skills. But Venus, the ruler of relating, moves from where she has been in a glorious location for you, particularly at the start of the month with that link to Pluto, into one of her less favoured areas. She can be quite possessive in Scorpio, very sensitive, very attached, maybe even a little clingy. Maybe it's a time when the psychology of one close relationship is going to become more obvious. Or is it that you're going to go from the conversation with someone to a much deeper physical, emotional and spiritual connection, which could go all the way to sexual intimacy? But on the 26th, Mercury replaces Venus in Libra. So that's great, because that's really helping to keep the lines of communication open. And then we have a Mercury cazimi right at the end of the month. But because Mercury is not in retrograde, therefore it's a superior conjunction, the opportunity to illuminate your situation and understand much more your connections to others, the importance of those connections, what you're prepared to give, what you expect from others, where you're going to set your boundaries, where you're going to compete with people. All of this energy really comes to the fore through this autumnal equinox at the end of the month. But I think the overwhelming theme for the rest of the month is making sure that your motivations are based on strands that give you some kind of tangible benefit in a practical way, but just don't ignore the emotional, spiritual and psychological domain, because if you do, that can really affect your physical vitality but also your spirits. If you're prepared to try to integrate the two polarities, particularly with that lunar eclipse, then by the end of this month you could have reformed quite a few areas of your life, but also become much cannier about who's not really in your corner, because the 12th house can be secret enemies, and Saturn of course can be very tricky. But you will know by the end of the month who you can relate to, who's for you, and who are the alliances you need to work harder upon. Have a great September. All the best and goodbye. Welcome Taurus, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for, but then please stay with me, the event chart on screen for Taurus, and then I'll go through all the big changes and shifts that unfold as September develops. Now, your ruler, Venus, is something we do need to be mindful of. Venus starts this month just into the other zodiac sign it governs of Libra, which is very much about relating. And your professional relationships come to the fore right at the start of this month. Why should that be? And there could be a travel dynamic or learning some new skills that may be part of the equation. But you are going to have an opportunity to manifest your talents, your creativity and your charisma with the wonderful new moon of the 3rd. But then we have Mars, the planet of passion, moving into a much faster location for 8 weeks on the 4th. Mercury returns to the sign it rules of Virgo, joining up with the Sun on the 9th, and that adds more sparkle. If something has felt very bogged down, you're going to find yourself in much better form from then. But we do have the first of a new eclipse series on the 18th. So I'm going to share about that. It's very, very delicate because it's very close to the position of Neptune. Then we have the autumnal equinox of the 22nd. Very practical for you, but as the month draws to a close, your ruler darts into your opposite sign. Gorgeous for your romantic prospects and all sorts of relationships. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, as ever, I truly appreciate your support. If you've yet to subscribe, please do so. Help the channel to thrive and click that bell notification symbol. If you'd like to talk to me one-to-one with a consultation, please see the link below and check out my testimonials. And if you'd like to take advantage of my year 2025 very special personal horoscope forecast offer, you can order that now, get the rest of this year free, but also your life roadmap report, which will give you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far. Please see the link below for more. So, Taurus, on the screen now, we have the event chart right at the start of the month. And I mentioned your ruler Venus is forging a very dynamic link to Pluto right at the start of the month. And you can see that Pluto shows itself in house 10, but it's going to move back into house 9 later on the first day in terms of universal time. But it doesn't mean to say that Venus and Pluto aren't still linked. They are, but just in a slightly different way. But if there is something that you want to do that is much more daring when it comes to your career, who you know could be just as important as what you know, to be honest. But then Pluto inverses back into the part of your chart to do with knowledge, but also to do with freedom. If your freedom has been cramped by worldly responsibilities since the 21st of January, it wouldn't be a surprise. Perhaps you felt a little bit locked into a situation that hasn't felt particularly positive for you. But as we come into this month, we do need to be aware of the role of Mars. Mars is in your second house. It's been given you over the previous 6 weeks a desire. So you've wanted to enjoy the good things in life, perhaps found it quite hard to resist them at times, to be honest. But Mars is in a square with Neptune, but also back to your ruler Venus. So if you are talking about that professional situation, a financial component could be something that you feel quite strongly about, but teasing out the information in a way that you can make an informed decision around could prove challenging, because it may be the people you're trying to link with can be a little bit opaque, to say the least, not really revealing their hand, keep asking you questions about what you want, and that can be frustrating. Also, the planet of fortune, Jupiter, is conflicted by the planet of limitation, Saturn, as we go into this month. Saturn, like Neptune, is in the part of your chart to do with your network, your friendship, your higher values, but also your future. And if you are feeling very stymied about what to do about your future, and finance is a big part of the concern you have, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. So Mars squares up to Neptune as we come into this month, so you may feel a little bogged down, and that can feel frustrating. But the pace of life can pick up from the new moon of the 3rd, because that's going to bring a sense of greater excitement. It is, to be honest, going to be blocked off, some of the energy from that, from the 5th through to the 10th, by the more restraining energies of Saturn. So Saturn's playing quite the role at the start of this month. So even though the Sun is going to be moving forwards, and in fact does square up to Jupiter in week 2, and kind of saying to you really that whatever you promise, it needs to be something you can deliver on, but also you may find it a little bit hard to resist anything where impulse draws you towards something that has some kind of apparent attraction. It could be someone you're drawn to romantically in week 2. It could be a big ticket item. But I feel that you will get a bit more help once Mars moves into Cancer, because that's going to bring an extra sense of vigour and stamina, and it's going to be here for 8 weeks. And although the new moon is in your 5th house, which is where you can have fun and socialise and be very sparkly, I feel that what Mars does is gives you much more of a dynamic drive to work towards what's intriguing you. But we also have on the 9th, Mercury, as I mentioned, returning back to Virgo, and then coming out of its post-retrograde shadow on the 11th. If you have been finding that life has been quite tricky, maybe very emotional, maybe there's been some confusion, maybe you felt a sense of inertia, I feel that that is going to shift to some degree. You also have in week 3 of this month a very fine link between Uranus in your sign and also of the Sun. If there is part of you that is a little bit more tempted to stick with what you know, which is a very Taurus tendency, Pluto going back into house 9 and the Sun linking to Uranus in week 3 is really pushing you to escape anything that's really choking off your passion. You know, if we're doing any role or we're in any situation where we don't feel very inspired, what it's doing is stealing our energy at some kind of level. But it's also true to say that we do have concurrent to that trine between the Sun and Uranus, a very complex opposition between the Sun and Neptune. So that 5th house energy of the Sun is confronted by the lunar eclipse in Pisces alongside Neptune on the 18th. So this new eclipse series comes in. So over the next 6 months, if you are uncertain about a love relationship or about a friendship or about your future, you may find yourself going through a little bit of a testing time, to be frank. But the key is Uranus, because what we've got is the Sun forges the trine to Uranus and the eclipse forges a sextile. So Uranus is, if you like, a passage to what you really need to do. And that's actually invest in what's right for you, the individual. And this is where Pluto going back into your 9th house, I feel, actually could be very positive for you. It's through to the 20th of November. It won't come back in our lifetimes. So it's a small window of opportunity, but it's really pushing you to be more daring. You've probably been very daring in some ways since 2008 for someone who's supposed to have a particular appreciation of stability and continuity. So you may have travelled a lot, worked overseas, you may have learnt new skills, been much more interested in history, philosophy, all sorts of sparkling stuff's come in, but there still may be something that you need to ask yourself the question of, are you still attached to something which is not so good for you? And the autumnal equinox and ushering in cardinal quadrant 3, because Western tropical astrology is divided into 4 sections of 13 weeks based on the seasons. For you, this is very practical, but it does link to Pluto. So it could mean that a new job or a new identity in some ways can help you with the relationship dynamic. And if you are single, as Venus moves into Scorpio, which is technically not its best location, but it's excellent for you, you have a brilliant opportunity as this month draws to a close to use your relating skills, your charm, your seductive way of connecting to people that's earthy and very coquettish. You could bring someone to you. So if there is someone you really fancy, set your intentions at the end of this month. But also I feel that maybe the change away from something that has been bogging you down needs to be at some kind of practical level, ironically. Mercury helps you at the end of this month. We have a Cazimi on the 30th of the Sun and Mercury exactly unify. And your sparkle around the way you think about things, in terms of services you offer, jobs you're prepared to do, really gives you a great chance as you come to the end of this month to find some new purpose, but in a way that helps you to carry on manifesting some of the creativity and talent and charisma that the Sun's passage through Virgo was certainly giving you. It's just that Saturn and Neptune were checking the validity in terms of, were they right for you long term? Were you connecting to the right people for you long term? Those are the questions you need to ask Taurus. Have a great September. Take care and goodbye. As you come into this month, Gemini, you've got 2 planets still in your sign, Mars and Jupiter, but they're conflicted as you come into this month. And therefore, something that you're really wanting as an individual may seem a little bit out of reach. It could be about where you live. It could be about your professional situation. I'm going to unpack this for you. There is a balance that you're going to need to try to find. But also this is a month when we're going to see a new eclipse series, which begins on the 18th, and it's in the sign of Pisces, how you connect to the wider world. Your imagination is going to be a critical feature of that over the next 6 months. But on the 22nd, we have the autumnal equinox. The sun marches into your sister air sign of Libra, bringing about a 13-week period where you can really shine with the warmth of your personality, but also the radiance of your ideas. There's also some other very exciting information that brings the curtain down on this month. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please feel welcome to share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, as always, I truly appreciate your support. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, please help it thrive. Click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. I'm a consulting astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. You can see how other people have found working with me. And finally, my year 2025 personal horoscope forecast special offer is now launched. You can get the rest of this year free if you order your 25 now, plus 30% off and your life roadmap report. These charts are totally unique to you. They're fantastic value. Such a lot of information. Please see the link below for more. So on the screen now, Gemini, I'm showing the event chart at the start of the month. Of course, we can be mindful of the lunaries. So the sun for you is in house 4, how things feel, your immediate environment, very much to do with security, shelter and nurture. But the moon is actually in the very quick move in 3rd house and links very positively to Jupiter in your sign. So there may be a sense as you come into this month that something is cooking and it's cooking good. And part of the reason for that, I feel, is that Venus, the planet of relating, is in a delicious location for you, and it could be making you feel utterly gorgeous. It's also linking very dynamically to Pluto. Pluto in your 9th house has since the 21st of January been really pushing you to expand your horizons, be a bit more daring, learn new topics, perhaps even some formal subjects. And this link with Pluto suggests if you are traveling anywhere at the start of this month, you could be captivated, not just by the place that you visit and totally immerse yourself in it, but by a particular person. But if you are trying to find a balance between your home, professional lives, this month can prove to be a little bit challenging to begin with, to be honest. Because right at the start of the month, although Jupiter and Mars in your sign are very strong, and Jupiter makes that great link to the moon, and Mars is forging a pretty fine link to Mercury, actually Mars is conflicted by Neptune and also, in a strange way, by Venus. So there's a T-square. Mars is about what you want as an individual. It's going to move out of your sign on the 4th into Cancer, but it starts this month in a very enervating and confusing link with Neptune, but also in a link with Venus, which could see you go for something quickly, which isn't necessarily the right thing for you. Also, Saturn in your 10th house of responsibilities suggests someone you encounter professionally may be very enshrined in a very traditional way of doing things. They may have a very process-orientated approach, which you could find is a real killer for your passion and flair. So if you are someone who's more of a natural bohemian or a much more of an individualistic person, you could find the very start of this month to be pretty frustrating. And with Pluto inversing back into Capricorn, also on the 1st, after it links with Venus so beautifully, that's also suggesting through to the 19th of November that how you earn money, how you value things, how you're connected very deeply to other people could go through a final reanalysis. It's not going to happen in our lifetime again. It won't go through Capricorn in our lifetime again. But you could find yourself diving deep psychologically through to the 3rd week of November. But also, as we go into this new month, we then have a new moon on the 3rd. This new moon in Virgo is very much about appreciating the virtues of the sign of virtue, Virgo. So where you live, the more it's working in a functional way, the better it is. But if you're working a lot of hours, juggling different roles, perhaps even different jobs, looking after the needs of others, it can all start to feel very oppressive, particularly from the 5th through to the 10th, because then after the new moon occurs, the sun goes face to face with Saturn. And we all know that we have all this technology, we have all these aids to help us, and everyone seems to be even more exhausted and stressed out trying to keep up. And if that seems to call out to you, just be aware that Mars moves on the 4th into Cancer. He doesn't particularly like being in Cancer. He can be a bit niggly and defensive here, to be honest. But what he's saying to you is whatever you are doing, professionally or at home, it needs to have some kind of benefit in a practical way, perhaps financially, but also in terms of keeping things stable in your life. So Mars is giving you thrust around perhaps making more money for the following 8 weeks, and that in itself is an unusual transit. Mars is usually 6. It's because of an upcoming Mars retrograde in Leo, which follows after this one, after the 8-week period. But what we're going to get here for you is a chance to evaluate how you're trying to find that balance between home and work. And Mars, therefore, in a way, can be an agent of good, I feel. But what Jupiter has been doing, perhaps, if you've been watching certain astrologers, is that has made you eternally optimistic about how things can turn out. But Jupiter, of course, is in its detriment in your sign. And that's because your sign benefits from quick communication. Jupiter's really about the big picture through its rulership of Sagittarius, philosophy, the higher truth, and through its rulership of Pisces, very much about faith. So in your sign, it can be a bit impatient, and it's clamped by Saturn at the start of this month. And then as the sun moves forwards, the sun then goes into a square with Jupiter. So the more you kind of think, look, this has got to work out for me because Jupiter's in my sign, the more disappointed you could be. So keeping a healthy dose of realism actually can really be to your advantage. And we're going to get an opportunity to find that extra realism because on the 9th, Mercury switches back into Virgo. It also emerges from its post-retrograde shadow on the 11th. But we have a lunar eclipse on the 18th, as I mentioned in my introduction, that is the first of a new series, provides a backdrop for the next 6 months, but it is very close to Neptune. So in week 3, we have 2 overlapping influences. One potentially very strong, that's a great link between Uranus and also the Sun, asking you perhaps to dig deep, to quarry out some inner resources and look at some emotional issues perhaps in a fresh way. Perhaps talk to people who have a completely different perspective to you, because that can provide in itself a lot of fresh understanding. But the opposition with Neptune means that if you are a bit dispirited with your professional situation and you're having to work very, very hard to protect what you have emotionally or physically in terms of your property or your home, it can feel somewhat exhausting. But the key here, really, to be honest, is you asking the question, are you, in terms of your professional interactions, in an environment that truly works for you? If you're clinging on to a job for the money but you hate it, or if you're in a job that's wonderfully perfect for you creatively but doesn't pay any money, both actually are not quite working for you, and you may need to rethink. And what's going to help you to rethink is the autumnal equinox. The sun's crashing arrival in Libra, your sister air sign, of the 22nd. It's linked with Pluto, even though Pluto is in Capricorn now. It's a disassociate link. Is terrific. And that can in itself be a big impetus to really find the inner voice, the inner energy and verve and vibe to shake something up that really is ripe for changing. And when we have Venus moving into your 6th house on the 23rd, it's possible you could nab yourself a new job. Then on the 26th, Mercury joins up the Sun in your 5th house. So it's all getting very sparkly at the end of this month. The 30th, we have a cazimi, but it's a positive one in the sense it's a superior conjunction because the Sun and Mercury merge. The Sun amplifies and radiates into Mercury, but in Libra, that gives you a fantastic opportunity to turn up the brightness on any talent, flair, creativity, artistry, or just allure that you have. So as much as this month, for the first 2 months, may be very much about trying to find some kind of way through that works for you as an individual, 2 competing energies, by the last 10 days, the chance for you to really showcase and dazzle people with all the best about you is absolutely awesome. Seize it with both hands. It's been a pleasure being with you, Gemini. Have a great September and goodbye. Welcome, Cancer, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for, but please stay with me. Then on screen, your event chart right at the start of the month, which always provides some very valuable information. And then as the month unfolds, I'll give you all the key dates and influences, particularly relevant to your sign. The big takeout at the start of the month is Mars making its way into your sign on the 4th. You may have ended August feeling somewhat apathetic. You may even start this month feeling underpowered too. But Mars arriving into your sign is really going to give you quite a spark. It's going to give you a lot of extra traction. We also have a new moon, and of course your sign is ruled by the moon on the 3rd. That's going to give you a platform to express yourself with more clarity. But we do have the first of a new eclipse series on the 18th in the sign of Pisces, your sister water sign. Now, since 2012, you've had a glorious opportunity to widen your horizons. You may have travelled, you may have learnt a lot about spirituality, you may have connected in some kind of higher form to a more ethereal part of life and yourself. And all that comes sharply into focus because that eclipse is also very close to Neptune, which is behind that energy. So I need to unpack that for you. But also on the 22nd, we have the autumnal equinox. The Sun makes its way into Libra. And for you, this is redolent of the energy of your sign. So you want to find balance, but balance around your home, emotional and family life. Venus, however, does move late in the month into a very glamorous sector, but Mercury replaces her on the 26th. So as the month comes to a close, something around the way you connect to people very close to you or your deep emotional feelings is really going to come to the fore. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you're a returning visitor, as ever, you're truly appreciated. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. I am a consultant astrologer, and you can read what other people have said after working with me. If you'd like to take advantage of my unique year 2025 personal horoscope forecast offer, you can order yours now but get the rest of this year free, but also 30% off and your life roadmap report. This gives you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far and a much more intimate knowledge of how to work with these energies future forwards. Please see the link below for more. So on the screen now, we have your event chart right at the start of the month. Now, it's always important in astrology to be conscious of the planet which is closest to one of the angles. And your 10th house angle, how you connect to the wider world, has Neptune cresting very close to it on your 9th house. But as I mentioned in my introduction, it is squaring with Mars, and that has perhaps created some low vitality. And particularly with Mars going through your 12th house over the last 6 weeks, all of this may have come up to the boil as you come into the start of this month. So if you have lacked a little bit of decisiveness or drive, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. But look at where Venus is right at the bottom of your chart. That's in your 4th house. And that's urging you to get the part of your existence that's very much to do with comfort and your immediate environment as refined as possible. So if you are someone who's quite artistic or good with colours, the combination of Neptune and Venus can be excellent for you. It's just that Mars is T-squaring both of them. So that's where that slight underpowered energy can really show itself as we enter this month. But also on the first day, Pluto, the planet of power, of transformation and of consequences, continues its retrograde by returning to the sign of Capricorn, which it left on the 21st of January. If you recall, we had 11 weeks of Pluto in Aquarius last year, but since the 21st of January this year. But for you, the 7th house is your interaction with others. And this can be, therefore, very much to do with relationships. If you have experienced some powerful interactions over the years since 2008, as Pluto made its way through your sector of relationships, you may have seen some key ties dissolve, make way, cords be cut, or new players come in who've been really significant. But there can be a bit more of this politics through to the 19th of November. But despite this, Pluto actually forges a terrific link with Venus at the start of this month. So if you are trying to renovate or upgrade a property or transact a property sale or purchase or rental, that can still be very good for you. But the new moon of the 3rd, it's all about how you interact on an everyday basis. But it's a sparkling energy and it's an opportunity to showcase the imaginative ideas you have. If you are someone who does feel that your life is somewhat dominated by technology, one of the ways you can work with this new moon is to declutter your devices. So if there's lots of old data, get rid, free up space, free up energy. But you can do that in your immediate environs too. So that could mean getting some things, some possessions that you've held on to. Could be books, to be honest. And that extra space will help the energy to flow through. But by the 4th, that's the big moment of the month. Because Mars is really impacted by Neptune at the start of this month. So if you have lacked quite the amount of drive that you've wanted, or you have felt a little unwell in the previous 5 or 6 weeks, it wouldn't be a complete surprise, but it's like a furnace being applied to your ambitions. It's time to be much more individualistic in your approach. But also on the 9th, Mercury makes its way back into the sign of Virgo, which it rules. So of course this is seeing it come forwards again after its retrograde. But just be conscious the Sun is challenged by Saturn at this part of the month. So however much you want to do things quickly and dexterously, very 3rd house, somehow or another Saturn can hold you to account. So if you say something, you could be surprised that someone could challenge you about your point of view, or maybe feel that you're not being appropriate even in the way you're expressing yourself. So that can feel a little bit limiting and frustrating. But by the 11th, Mercury ends its post-retrograde shadow, which is a good thing. And through the 3rd week of this month, we do have that very important lunar eclipse, but we also have the Sun forging a sparkling alliance to Uranus. And Uranus has been pushing you since 2019, since March, full time, to be more experimental about the people you hang out with, about the ideals that inspire you. And because it's in your sector of your future progress, and Uranus is about getting in touch with the highest part of our nature, the most authentic part of our nature, maybe there's a conversation you're going to have which could be a revelation, but also it's acting upon it. And the lunar eclipse, with the rather drifting, dreamy energies of Neptune running through it, means that you can't be too idealistic about whatever you're planning. So the Sun in Virgo is asking you throughout this month really to make sure you crunch the numbers, dissect the ideas, very Virgo, and make sure whatever you plan to do has some kind of tangible benefit. But then on the 22nd we have the autumnal equinox. Now, just before this happens, the Sun in Virgo forges a perfect alliance with Venus, but it's still in touch with it as the Sun makes its way into Libra. This is the third cardinal quadrant of the year, Western tropical astrology divided by 4 slots of 13 weeks. So for you over the next 3 months, where you live, how you live there and who with is going to be an important theme. But it doesn't mean to say you can't transform those parts of your life, because you most certainly can. However, there's a beautiful and glamorous change on the 23rd when Venus makes its way into your sister water sign of Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio can be dramatic, possessive, intense, but it can also be hugely loyal. If there is someone you're drawn to where you feel the emotional dynamic works as well as fancying them, you're on to a good thing. But the 26th sees Mercury replace Venus in the sign of Libra. Again, balance is the key, but it's also asking you to exchange ideas and perhaps not be defensive if people see things differently, because the Cazimi, which brings the cosmic curtain down on the month, this is when the Sun and Mercury align in a beautiful way, amplifying the energy of Mercury. That Cazimi is asking you to think, but also stay in touch with how you feel. And that, in the process of doing that, try to get some kind of balance into your situation. So this is a month which does have some huge opportunities to be more assertive with Mars moving into your sign. But if you are sharing ideas, you may find that not everybody will necessarily accept them at face value. And certainly when it comes to relationships, if there was something quite powerful or painful that happened since 2008, there may be a reminder of that event through to the 19th of November. But as the month comes to a close, that part of you that loves to be reflective, quiet, find a place, a little nook where you can be more nurturing, healing, perhaps do some meditation or get into nature, really calls out to you. Have a great month, Cancer. Take care and goodbye. Welcome, Leo, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details for you to look out for, but please stay with me. Then on screen, your event chart, hugely influential at the start of the month, and then I'll go through all the key dates and influences as September unfolds. So the big takeout as you come into this month is the Sun is in the sign of Virgo. So that's very much about resources. But you do have 3 key players in your sign: the path of fortune, the Moon and Mercury. And Mercury is a bit agitated as it starts this month in a right angle to Uranus. So as you come into the month, there's part of you that may want to manifest a more individualistic part of your nature when it comes to your professional interactions. But because of the Sun being in the 2nd house and the new moon on the 3rd, you may have to think very carefully about what the financial implications are. But there's a major event on the 4th. Mars, the planet of power and passion, moves for 8 weeks, a very unusually extended period, into your 12th house. I'll unpack that for you because that can be quite delicate. Now, we do have a lunar eclipse on the 18th, but that can be quite deceptive. It's very, very close to Neptune. It's a new lunar eclipse series. So again, I shall take some care in explaining that to you. But the 22nd sees the autumnal equinox. The Sun powers into the sign of Libra, ushering in a 13-week period when things can really speed up for you. But we do have some changes at the end of the month, but also some opportunities. And the cosmic curtain comes down on September with a Mercury Cazimi. So please stay with me for more. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, as ever, your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to sub, please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. I'm a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. Also, just like to tell you about my unique special offer. You can order your personal year 2025 transits forecast now and get the rest of this year free, and also 30% off and your life roadmap report. This gives you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far, but also how you can work with these energies more effectively future forwards. Please see the link below for more. So Leo, on the screen now, I'm showing your event chart. It's always important in astrology to be mindful of a planet which is very close to an angle. So there's Pluto on your 7th house. Relationships, but particularly work relationships, are going to be a big part of this month's story, I feel, because later on the first day, Pluto inverses back into Capricorn for one final visit in our lifetimes. But it does forge a glittering alliance with Venus at the start of this month. You could find yourself quite persuasive, but it's very important you're clear on your objective, because you can see that Neptune, which is going to be very important in that lunar eclipse on the 18th, is opposing Venus, but critically in a right angle to Mars. So Mars at the start of this month is really bringing to an end a 5-week period where it's been pushing you to really step up your connections to others. And of course it linked up with Jupiter at the heart of last month in quite an exciting way. But if you recall, Saturn impacted on that event, and now it's Neptune's turn. So as you come into this month, if there is anything that you're trying to move forwards with in terms of your long-term plan, the 11th house of Gemini, and you're not quite sure on the financial implications, do proceed with caution. Then again, you may find yourself not quite as fired up as you have recently been about some of those future hopes. But also, as we come into this month, I mentioned that you had Mercury, the Moon, and also the part of fortune in your sign. But Mercury's in a very tense right angle with Uranus. If you do want to manifest some individual talents as this month begins, it's possible that you can be in quite a hurry to showcase them because of that electric connection between Mercury and Uranus. But someone more traditional may find that challenging, or you may just feel you're so ahead of the crowd, no one can keep up. On the 3rd, we have a new moon. If you do want to firm up your foundations and how you're going to build up your resources going forwards, this can be a positive new moon, but it also sees on the 4th Mars joining up in your 12th house. The 12th house is the sector of secret enemies in traditional astrology. In modern astrology, we're talking more about the spiritual, psychological, and subconscious parts of our existence. So it's the areas that we're not always keen to look at. Now, because Mars is a very impatient influence, what it can do is stir things up that have lain dormant for some time. The reason that Mars is going to be in this delicate part of your situation for 8 long weeks is because on the 4th of November, Mars will make its way into your sign, and then on the 6th of December it goes into a retrograde. That only happens every couple of years. So what you've got is a preamble to that, but Mars moving through house 12 asks us to look at some awkward things from our past that could be lingering deep within our being. If you are interested in Gestalt, I feel that we hold emotions in our body, within our limbs. If you're someone who really wants to embrace that kind of healing over the next 8 weeks, it could be a superb opportunity. If you're less inclined to look backwards in your situation, or want to just forget about some more difficult and painful events from the past, Mars going through this area can be quite tricky, to be honest, and it could see your moods rather up and down. Also, as the Sun moves forwards, it goes into a direct opposition with Saturn. Now, Saturn is the planet of limitation, and what it's been asking you to do over the last 16 months is take your shared resources, your long-term financial planning, and how you use your investments. It's been asking you to take a lot more care. Because the new moon is asking you to be in the moment around resources, Saturn comes along to just remind you of the financial reality. So balancing the books is a big part of this month's story. It may not be very sexy, but it is a fact. One of the good parts of Mars moving through the 12th house is you could make a connection with someone from your past, someone you used to work with, someone quite influential, and there could be an opportunity to reconnect and work with them again. You may even find yourself attracted to jobs working behind the scenes, big institutions. You don't necessarily have to be front of house with Mars in the 12th house. And of course, the sign of Cancer is a very emotional sign, and Mars here can be a little bit prickly and defensive. So just be aware that your psychological world can be quite tender over this next 2 months. But on the 9th, Mercury returns from your sign back into the sign of Virgo. So if something has stalled with that Saturn opposition to the Sun, something you wanted to manifest through the new moon, when it comes to resources, that and Mercury emerging from its post-retrograde shadow on the 11th can be very positive for you. But the 18th sees that new lunar eclipse series. This one beginning in Pisces, reflecting back to the Sun located in Virgo. Virgo is very practical. Pisces for you is very much to do with the 8th house, like Saturn. So it's to do with those joint resources. It can be very spiritual in terms of melding ourselves into a situation where we're very devoted and very blended with someone else. So over the next 6 months, if you are wanting to develop something that's more spiritual or creative, particularly to do with film, I would say, or photography, then a great opportunity. But it all relates back to the position of the Sun, which is very earthly, of course, in Virgo, and it wants us to crunch the numbers and be as realistic as possible. Fortunately, Uranus plays a great part this month because the Sun in Virgo links back to Uranus in that very visible part of your situation. Trying something different, being more innovative, or learning new skills to update your experiences and amend them to suit the current employment situation could be a great chance for you to get that uplift in your finances. But the 22nd sees the autumnal equinox, one of the most important points of the whole year. This is called an earth point or a cardinal point. The Sun moves into Libra. We start the third 13-week period of the year. Western tropical astrology is predicated on the seasons, not the moving constellations. So the first one is the spring equinox, the second the summer solstice, and the third the autumnal equinox. So wherever you are in the world, in terms of Western tropical astrology, the Sun moves into Libra, even though if you're down south, it is your spring equinox. And what this does, it forges a great link to Pluto. If you recall, Pluto on the first day moved into the pragmatic 6th house again. Your ability to convey your ideas is going to be enhanced by the Sun moving into Libra. But Venus moves on the 23rd from Libra into Scorpio. You're going to become much more caught up in your thinking around your home and emotional relationships. If there is some politics with a sibling, for example, or a neighbour, that's something that Venus can tease into the open. But also it can give you the impulse to do some home decoration. The 26th sees Mercury replace Venus in the sign of Libra, which of course is very much about balance. But it's about listening. The third house for you is about those quick conversations. And as the Sun and Mercury crest together in a superior conjunction, as the month draws to a close, you can glitter and really shine and show people just how dexterous and quick-witted you can be. So if there is something you feel very invested in, you can sparkle as this month draws to a close. But I think the essential story of this month is with Pluto returning to your 6th house, there may be something around your job, your work, your responsibilities or obligations, which may go through a further review through to the 19th of November. But the desire to improve your financial lot is definitely going to be strong, but the need to be very realistic is definitely there. And that could mean that any gains happen after a lot of hard work, application and perspiration. But there is the potential for progress. There is the potential to join together with someone if it's the right person. And then as we come to the end of the month, you are going to feel a speeding up, which can be very exciting indeed. Much more social interaction as September comes to a close. Have a great month, Leo. All the best and goodbye. Welcome, Virgo, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for to begin with, but please stay with me. Then on screen, your event chart right at the start of the month. That's always hugely influential. And then I'm going to unpack how things unfold as September develops, both in terms of influences and exact timing for your sign. Now, your ruler Mercury starts this month in a sheltered location, the 12th house, but also in an electric link to Uranus. So the first week could see you a little bit on edge, and if there is something that's a bit out of kilter, it may be hard to disguise it. But also as we come into this month, Mars, the planet of passion and power, remains high in the sky in your chart. But if there's a professional relationship that's not working so well, you could be unsure of how things are going to evolve. The third, however, sees the annual new moon in your sign. This is your chance to showcase what makes you special over the next month. It's augmented on the 4th by Mars hustling and bustling into your 11th house, your sector of connections and long-term plans. He's going to be there for an extended 8 weeks, really exciting. And on the 9th, Mercury returns to your sign, emerges from the post-retrograde shadow on the 11th. Both things truly to be celebrated. But the 18th does see a new eclipse series begin in your opposite sign of Pisces, which is very dreamy and drifting, but it's essentially for you about relationships. You could feel a little bit uncertain about where someone's coming from. Certainly getting some mixed signals, so I need to explore that with you. There is a great link with Uranus, however, that also threads its way into that eclipse. But by the 22nd, it's all about the money, or all about the economy, stupid, as the sun makes its way into Libra. This is also the autumnal equinox. We're going to see a lot of energy at the end of this month in terms of your self-worth, your values, but also your income. So lots to share with you. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, this is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please feel very welcome to share them. Returning visitor, as always, I truly appreciate all your support. If you've yet to sub, please do so now. Click the bell notification symbol and please help the channel to thrive. If you'd like to have a consultation with me, please see the testimonials below of what other people have found working closely with me. And also, if you'd like to take advantage of my unique special offer, you can order your year 2025 personal transit forecast now. Get the rest of this year free, 30% off, but also my life roadmap report. This will give you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far, but also much greater insights how to work with those energies future forwards. Please see below for more. So Virgo, as you come into this month, the sun is still in your sign. It's just in your first decan, still the first 10 degrees, so therefore communication is going to be a big part of this month's story. But having your ruler trapped in the 12th house can be complex. It's also in quite an electric right angle with Uranus. So Uranus is in the part of your chart to do with freedom. If you do feel penned in any part of your situation, whether it's emotionally, financially, a job, a relationship, Think of the Eight of Swords in the tarot, where we feel that we don't have many options. There could be a sense of that, but you could also look at this energy in a fresh light by understanding that actually Mars and Jupiter have been giving you a big push to try to be more in charge of your personal destiny over recent weeks. And perhaps part of your frustration could be that you're not feeling quite as seen and heard as you would like. So as you come into this month, Mars' square with Neptune can create a certain downturn in the amount of self-belief or conviction you've got to succeed around key goals. Now, I feel that Pluto returning to the sign of Capricorn on the 1st, inverting back into the sign for one final visit through to the 19th of November, is just reminding you that you do have a lot of talent. What Pluto's been doing since the 21st of January is making you aware of where you're very conscientious, committed, provide services, but that can sometimes starve you of giving your personal qualities the oxygen to really thrive. So Pluto can be good for you in a way through to the 19th of November, but I feel that if Mars and Neptune square at the start of this month does see you feeling a little deflated, just be aware that once you have the new moon in your sign on the 3rd, that's a glittering opportunity to reset your posture. So if you want to be more assertive, if you want to get on the front foot, that new moon can help. Also, it's great if you want to give yourself some kind of fresh makeover. But the 4th augments that new moon brilliantly because Mars moves into a much more collaborative part of your chart. It's going to be there for 8 long weeks. So Mars moving into that area through to the 4th of November suggests your alliances with others are going to be very important. Then on the 9th, Mercury rejoins you. Something that's been blocked, that perhaps has had to be adapted, that's caused a huge amount of frustration, can by the 11th start to gain traction. But just be aware that through the second week of this month, the Sun goes face to face with Saturn. And as much as you may want to invest in what makes you personally happy and motivated, the new moon and Mars in the 11th house, someone you need to interact with could prove to be quite a challenge. Maybe they're not very impressed with what you want to do. Maybe they're going to challenge you in some ways. You could meet some opposition. But I feel that Mercury returning to your sign and Mercury ending its post-retrograde shadow does bring you into the moment in a very quick, mindful way, which will be helpful. Now, in week 3, we have a fantastic link between the Sun in your sign and Uranus. If you recall, through the spring months, there was a particular phase of the year when you were really being pushed and almost provoked to be much more daring in your approach and to escape anything that was really limiting you. So if that feeling that you have or may have at the start of this month with Mars squaring with Neptune and your ruler squaring with Uranus, if you're still feeling that, what I feel is going to happen is that the Sun's angle to Uranus can just push you to remind you that sometimes we have to let go of something that we're comfortable with in order to receive something that's that much more exciting. But if you are experiencing some confusion around relationships or a particular involvement, that could be a factor over the following 6 months because of the lunar eclipse on the 18th, a new series in the sign of Pisces. That's your sector of relating. Since 2012, Neptune's brought some magic to that area, but perhaps also some dissolution and disappointment. Saturn over the last 16 months, perhaps more demands from people that you're interacting with. But on the 22nd, the Sun makes its way into the sign of Libra. And this is very much about being in touch with your values, pursuing over the following 13 weeks anything that can reinforce the foundations of your life. Also, there's a great link with the Sun and Pluto just before the equinox, which could see you evolve, take a giant step forwards in a way which could surprise you. It may be deep within you, or it could be in your physical world. But on the 23rd, Venus, the planet of relating, but also money, moves into your third house. Now, Venus has been blessing you, potentially with some extra resources, but it may have also made you a bit more tempted by calorific goodies. Moving into your third house, it's much more about quick interactions. And certainly if you want to relate to someone or meet someone new, it could be some kind of meetup, dating event or online opportunity attracts you to it. But the 26th sees your ruler move out of your sign and into Libra. If you are wanting to rethink how you can improve your financial situation, you get a wonderful opportunity towards the end of this month as Mercury and the Sun combine and create a GEMINI. The radiance of the Sun heats up your ruler and helps you to be very quick-witted and potentially show some ingenuity, even all the way to something quite radical that can help you get ahead as the month draws to a close. So it's definitely a month when you can manifest your individuality, Virgo. It's going to get easier to do that as the month goes on, but you do need to be mindful of who you're talking to. So whatever ideas you've got, however driven you feel, you've still got to run it past someone, whether it's a boss, a bank manager, a business advisor, an investor, or a partner, or a parent, in order to get that level of cooperation and collaboration. So a good balance between what you want and how you connect to others is really the secret of this month. Have a great September, all the best and goodbye. Welcome Libra to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details with you to begin with, but please stay with me. Then on screen I'll share your event chart right at the start of the month. That always provides an enormous amount of information, and then as the days unfold, all the key influences and timings particularly relevant to you. Now as we come into September, your ruler Venus is right at the heart of the action, so I really need to unpack that for you. However, she does forge an impressive link with Pluto, which coincidentally goes into the sign of Capricorn, returns for one last visit in our lifetimes through to the 19th of November 2024. Anything to do with your home, emotional and family situations are going to come under a deeper astrological review. But we have a new moon on the 3rd, and then on the 4th, Mars, the planet of desire and passion, climbs into a very influential part of your situation. But it's going to be for 8 weeks, so I'm really excited to share that with you. Now, we are going to have Mercury return back to the sign of Virgo on the 9th, but that's still a very tender position for you. And in fact, there are some rather tender energies that I do need to share. But by the time we get to the first of a new series of lunar eclipses, which occurs on the 18th, in the part of your situation to do with your obligations, responsibilities, potentially your work, and possibly your health, that's very delicately influenced by the dreamy energies of Neptune. But the most important influence for you the whole month is the return of the Sun to your sign on the 22nd after an absence of 11 months. This also announces the autumnal equinox and ushers in cardinal quadrant 3, a backdrop of energy for the next 13 weeks, which is very much about equity, balance and fairness. But also your financial situation takes a turn for the better on the 23rd. So really, really good news to share there. And then as the month draws to a close, that part of you that's a communicator par excellence is really emphasized. So a very important event brings down the cosmic curtain on September. So please stay with me for more. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, Thank you so much for your company. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, your views and interactions, as always, are truly appreciated. Please help the channel to thrive. If you've yet to subscribe, click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. I'm a consulting astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. I've also launched my year 2025 unique personal horoscope forecast offer. You can get next year and also the rest of year 2024 30% off, and your life roadmap report. This whole package will give you searing insights and help you to plan your moves. But also the life roadmap report will help you to understand the energies that have played out in your life so far and how to work with them more succinctly going forwards. Please see the link below for more. So Libra on screen now. I'm showing your event chart at the start of the month, and I told you that your ruler Venus was very influential. Now you can see on the screen that at 2 degrees and 59, it's just right at the start of its journey through your sign. And one of the things that Venus can do here is encourage you to transform your personal appearance in some way or another. Now often Libran people can be very tasteful in the way they dress, but even if you are a dedicated follower of fashion, sometimes it's nice to do something completely different, and that's what Venus encourages you to do. But in terms of relationships, Venus is opposite Neptune, and both are T-squared by Mars right at the start of this month. If you're involved with someone or you've been attracted to someone and you're finding it difficult to really quarry out exactly where you stand with that person, you could really be unsure what to do. What can help you is that Pluto, the planet of transformation, despite inverting back into Capricorn later on the 1st, forges a powerful link to Venus and is really giving you the astral tools to really weigh up the value, because remember, Venus can be about worth, value, as well as how we relate and present ourselves. So if there is someone you're a little bit unsure of, it wouldn't be a surprise. And I think Mars being in the 9th house as this month begins is really encouraging you not to be fobbed off if you're not sure. It's just that Mars and Neptune are going to be squared up as we come into this month. And even if it's someone you find utterly captivating, if you find them so mysterious that you're not really knowing exactly how things are, however much or however strong the attraction is, it may be a little bit off-putting if that is how it feels. However, we do have on the 3rd a new moon. But to be honest, Libra, 12th house new moons are probably the trickiest. A new moon, as we know, is when we can set our intentions. The sun and the moon combine. A full moon, they're in competition. With a new moon, their energies come together and unify. So in the 12th house, if you're someone who's very much into healing, personal development, exploring the inner workings of your world, if you're okay with taking time out, taking a step back, really having some moments of meditation, or perhaps having a lovely spa day, or treating yourself to some time in some form of escapist environment, somewhere very peaceful, very quiet, you can work this new moon to your advantage. But the other side of the 12th house is where we can be fearful, and it can also be where people manifest their opposition to us, but not necessarily in an obvious way. So this new moon's fine if you're someone who wants to work at your inner world, your psychology, your subconscious, and anything to do with your spiritual growth. However, it does then the sun moves forwards and goes opposite Saturn. So the following days could bring something into sharp focus that's out of kilter in your world. And it may be that your vitality feels quite a bit on the low side. And if that's the case, don't underestimate just how much your mind or your anxieties could be impacting on your physical energy. But despite this, Mars does move on the 4th, as I mentioned, into a very dominant part of your situation, where he'll be for 8 long weeks. Now, Mars usually takes 6 weeks to go through each sign, so this is a bit of a celestial special offer. So through to the 4th of November, if you really want to pitch into a wider and more visible, in a wider and more visible way, your talents, the chances are Mars will give you the drive, ambition and extra self-confidence to do it. But this is just at a time when the Sun is in such a delicate part of its journey. With Mercury rejoining the Sun in the sign of Virgo on the 9th, though emerging from its post-retrograde shadow on the 11th, that's asking you to sort out any inner wound or inner doubts that may be in some ways inhibiting that more worldly, outgoing energy that Mars can help you with. And there's more to come on the 18th, because we have a very complex lunar eclipse, as I mentioned. It's the first in a new series going between the signs of Virgo and Pisces. And this one is also electrically conducted in a positive way by Uranus. So if you're open to transforming part of your situation, there are opportunities here. I think over the years, since 2012, it's possible that some Libran people have almost been too giving. And particularly with Pluto now back in your 4th house, if you're starting to feel that people are taking you for granted again, that your boundaries are being eroded, Neptune, you find it hard to say no or set your needs firmly in place, that's something you may have to revisit over the next 6 months. However, if you are someone who really wants to change your diet, your fitness approach, or even how you think about things, this can be a very radical and helpful lunar eclipse. But on the 22nd, the Sun returning to your sign brings you into the moment. So you're going to have a lot more ability to maneuver situations on your behalf. It also forges through this autumnal equinox an amazing link to Pluto. And although Pluto has just edged back into Capricorn, it can still help you make progress in terms of your creative plans, as long as it's in touch with how you feel. But on the 23rd, your ruler moves out of your sign and into the sign of Scorpio. Now, Venus is technically detrimented here, but I feel this will trigger some good news around a financial matter. In fact, on the 26th, as Mercury, the marketeer of the zodiac, moves into your sign, something that's been very blocked or uncertain or bogged down for some time can suddenly start to take shape in a really exciting way. And on the 30th, we have a cazimi. But because Mercury's going forwards, it's a superior conjunction, so one of the better Mercury cazimis that we can have, and the radiance of the Sun can light up the energy of Mercury. Of course, the Sun in Libra is not its technically best location, because the Sun is exalted in the sign of Aries. So the Sun being in your sign suggests that your tendency to try to work with people and be very collaborative, in some ways the Sun wants us to showcase what makes us as individuals come to life. But I feel that with Mercury in assistance, particularly with the cazimi, and the fact that you're working on from the autumnal equinox with the force of Pluto feeding into that, gives you a great opportunity to drive things forwards. And don't forget, you do have a fantastic solar eclipse in your sign on the 2nd of October to look forward to. So it's a very exciting end to the month for you. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Libra. Have a great September. Take care. And goodbye. Welcome, Scorpio, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details for you to look out with to begin with, but please stay with me. On the screen, I'll then share your event chart right at the start of September, which gives us a lot of powerful information. And then, as the days unfold, I'll share with you all the key dates and influences particularly relevant to your sign. As ever, we need to be mindful of your two rulers, and there's big news on day one. Pluto, your higher octave modern ruler, returns back to the sign of Capricorn. Now, it was last here on the 21st of January 2024, and through to the 19th of November this year, it makes its last passage for the part of your situation that's to do with your beliefs, your ideas, your interactions with people on a daily basis, but particularly people in your community or perhaps to your siblings. Pluto is very much about transformation, so I really need to delve into this carefully with you, and will do so. But also at the start of the month, your other ruler, Mars, is very dominant too, but it's in a rather challenging right angle with Neptune. When it comes to your love life, if things feel a little bit uncertain, the confusion could be amped up by that particular equation. But Mars moves on the 4th into a very exciting location for you. So I can't wait to share that. It's going to be in your 9th house for 8 weeks. Travel's coming for you, I can assure you. Also, your connection to certain individuals or friends is emphasized by the new moon of the 3rd, Mercury returning to Virgo on the 9th. But we do have, at the heart of this month, an electric connection between the Sun and Uranus. It's possible that someone who up until now has just been a friend or an associate could start to be much more interesting to you. But there is some mystery around your chart on the 18th, when we have the first of a new eclipse series, this one in your 5th house of romance, but the mystery comes from the role of Neptune. And then on the 22nd, we have the autumnal equinox. The Sun powers into your 12th house. Although the sign of Libra, which is the host, is very much about balance, for you it's around balance in terms of your psychological world. But with Venus joining your sign on the 23rd, if you're in the mood for a dazzling makeover, that can be the perfect time to do it. But as the month draws to a close, after what has been quite a busy month, you may find yourself actually wanting to have a few more moments to yourself. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe, please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button and also the bell notification symbol. I'm a consulting astrologer. If you'd like to explore working with me, please check out my testimonials below. Also, if you'd like to take advantage of my very unique year 2025 special personal horoscope forecast, you can buy that now but get the rest of this year free, plus your life roadmap report. This gives you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far, and how you can work with these energies more astutely future forwards. These are totally unique for each person they're produced for. Please see the link below for more. So Scorpio, on the screen now, I'm sharing your event chart right at the start of the month. And there's Pluto. It's still in Aquarius as we enter September, but later on the 1st, inverts back into Capricorn. The big question to you as an individual is, how did this play out for you from 2008, apart from those 11 weeks through the spring of 23, and how's it been up until January the 21st, 24? Because that gives you some clues. But of course, how we think and express ourselves, we live in an age of a lot of expression, but Pluto's very deep stuff. Is there still some more work to be done in terms of understanding how you connect to all that information and those people, in terms of how it feels right? Is there something important you have to say? But as this event occurs, we do have Venus in your 12th house. So it's possible that there could be quite a profound conversation around a relationship at the start of this month. Now Mars, your other ruler, is in your 8th house, which can be very much about intimacy and sex, but it is squared off by Neptune. But Mars also links back to Venus, so we have a T-square there. So if you are uncertain about a relationship, I think Mars moving on the 4th into your sister water sign of Cancer could give you the desire, to be honest, to liberate yourself from something that just feels too heavy. And with Pluto having been in your 4th house of emotion, if you have been going through a lot of stuff around a relationship, going back into 3 and Mars moving to 9 could give you the prompt to, at least on a temporary basis, have some kind of liberational space. But if you've yet to book a vacation for this year, Mars moving into your 9th house gives you lots of impulse to do it over the following 8 weeks. But also the 9th house can be about our higher ideal. So if you're drawn towards a course of education, or want to learn a foreign language, or perhaps can do some retraining in terms of your work, all of that can be blessed by the energy of Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer can be a little bit prickly and defensive. If people don't align to your ideas, one of the things you might have to guard against with Mars going through this area and Pluto going back to 3 is not getting too impatient if people don't quite pick up your point as rapidly as you would like. But the new moon on the 3rd does forge a great link with the path of fortune. Is there someone you can link with that you can collaborate with in a really constructive way? Because if it's a meetup group, a social group, a group of people that you've known for years and are a big part of your life, those connections are really going to be potentially blessed over the following 4 weeks from that new moon. Is there a catch? Well, I think it's just that from the 4th through to the 10th, the Sun does go into an opposition with Saturn. If you're feeling that within this group situation or network that you don't get heard enough as an individual, or your talents don't get manifested as much as you'd like, that could create some frustration. The good news is that Mercury moving back into Virgo on the 9th can help to just oil the wheels. If things have felt very bogged down, particularly in terms of a contract, some kind of agreement, if you've been waiting for news on some kind of insurance payout or a drawdown on another financial product, good news could come from the 9th, and particularly from the 11th, when Mercury emerges from its post-retrograde shadow. But on the 18th, we have that first lunar eclipse in the new series between Virgo and Pisces. The first one is a lunar eclipse in Pisces, very, very close to Neptune. If there is someone that's absolutely, totally captivating you, it could be their mystique that you're drawn to as much as anything else. But don't underestimate the opportunity to manifest your creativity, whether it's through art or photography or film or some other kind of hobby. Neptune in the midst can make you inspired, but it does mean you're going to have the strength to perhaps push back on what other people expect and want from you because of the energy in the 11th house. But if liberty is what you want around any kind of relationship, as the Sun angles to Uranus in week 3, that's a great opportunity to spring yourself out if that feels right. But equally, you could find yourself connecting to someone, even if temporarily, in an extremely exciting way, a way that could really make your pulse race. So if you are on a holiday, it could be a bit of a holiday romance which captures your imagination. But the 22nd sees the autumnal equinox. In Western tropical astrology, it's predicated on the seasons. So when we get to this point, this ushers in cardinal quadrant 3. Very much, as I said, about balance, but for you, can be a little bit more of a reflective period. But Venus, the planet of love, of relating, of money and self-worth, moves into your sign on the 23rd. If you have been going through some soul searching around relationships, this brings you into the present and you may be able to draw a line in the sand. But because Mercury replaces Venus in Libra on the 26th, and we have a Mercury cazimi on the 30th, there may still be some delicate issues that you need to work through. One of the things you can do with Venus moving into your sign is enjoy giving yourself a new look. Venus in your sign is very intense. It feels things deeply, can be a little jealous and possessive, but certainly if you are a free spirit, why not try to recreate your identity in some way, because that's what the first house is about. And Venus can be about fashion, and even if you're someone who feels that you're right on trend, sometimes it's good to do something that's a bit different that makes us stand out, and that's an opportunity to do this. So much of this month is very much about action. You could want to do something more rugged or different or adventurous. You could want to break free of any constraints. There's going to be a lot more thinking about your ideals than there has been. But I think by the end of the month, whatever happens, you could find yourself wanting some personal space, peace and quiet and tranquility. It's been a pleasure being with you, Scorpio. Have a great September. Take care and goodbye. Welcome, Sagittarius, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details to look out for, but then on your screen I'll share your event chart right at the start of the month. As ever, this always holds a lot of important information. Then as September unfolds, I'll give you all the key dates and influences particularly relevant to your sign. Now, we always need to be mindful of your ruler Jupiter, and as we come into this new month, Jupiter is still in a little bit of a challenging relationship with the planet of limitation, Saturn. This really reached its peak on the 19th of August, but as you come into the month, there is going to be some kind of relationship question that will need answering. But Pluto, the planet of transformation, is reversing back into your sector of everyday money, self-worth and values on the 1st. But as it does forge a very important link to Venus, the planet of relating, and that's going to be a very important alliance which helps you to decipher some of those relationship quandaries as you enter September. But when it comes to your career, the new moon of the 3rd gives you an opportunity to set your sights high. Also, Mars bustles into the part of your scope for 2 months on the 4th, which is to do with business. So if you are someone who wants to do something more dynamic and you're very ambitious, the combination of that new moon and Mars will help you. But Mars also in this location can be significant about your sex life, so please stay with me for more on that too. Now, we are going to have on the 9th Mercury returning to the sign of Virgo. It has been here before, of course, before the retrograde began. And you have an opportunity, if something has been outstanding around a business matter, to get some clarity on that. We have a lunar eclipse, the first of a new series, on the 18th, but it has a touch of mystery threaded through it. I'll explain just why. The 22nd, however, is an opportunity to really extend your social network. We have the autonomous equinox. It does forge a great link with Pluto too, but Venus moves on the 23rd into a very key location. If you have been trying to hum and ha about a relationship, that's going to be a big moment for you. But as the month draws to a close, the opportunity to connect with people who are important to you is really highlighted. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. This is a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, as ever, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to sub, please help the channel to thrive. Click that sub button and bell notification symbol. I'm a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please see the link below where you can check out my testimonials of what other people have found doing so. And finally, I've launched my year 2025 personal horoscope forecast offer. You can order that now, but get the rest of this year free. Also, in my special package of 30% off, you can get your life roadmap report. This will give you searing insights into the patterns that have played out in your life so far, and the combination of the two give you lots of information to guide your future prospects, and it is fantastic value. Please see below for more. So on the screen now, I'm showing your event chart. I mentioned in my introduction about Jupiter, and you can see that continues in the sign of Gemini. But Gemini is not actually the perfect host for your ruler, because Gemini is about quick exchanges, often sometimes reactions, not necessarily reactions that have been particularly thought through. So when it comes to relationships, and particularly at the heart of last month when Jupiter and Mars combined, there may have been an opportunity to really share how you felt with enthusiasm, but there may have also been a tendency to over-egg the pudding. And as we go into this new month, with Saturn checking Jupiter in your 7th house, but Saturn in your sector of emotion, factoring in how you feel is very important, even if you would like to think the best of someone and really hope a relationship can progress. But also Neptune in house 4 has been creating some disorientation since 2012 off and on for you about your home and emotional life. And that's in a very complex right angle with Mars, like Jupiter, in your sector of relating. So whatever relationship scenario you're faced with at the start of this month, whether it's an awkward line manager, whether it's a friend who hasn't quite been chiming in the way that you would normally like to see, or it is a love relationship, this does require some care. But I mentioned about Venus. And Venus starts this month in your sector of friendship, but also your long-term hopes. But also in the sign of Libra, it rules that sign, so it's a good place for it to be, and it does forge an impressive link with Pluto. What you're being asked to do here is think Pluto early on the 1st of September. Think about your values. Venus is about values, but also does the thinking and the values match a long-term prospect? Because as Pluto inverts back into Capricorn later in the day, that's your sector of foundations. And if you can't really see that someone would fit into your life in terms of the long term, or they don't share your values, those tense angles between Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter and Mars, it will help you to decipher exactly how this is playing out for you. Because if you're not sure, and that's really what Pluto and Venus reveal for you, it's up to you really to make a big decision. And one of the things that can guide that is that Mercury, the planet of communication, starts the month in the part of your chart to do with freedom and independence, but it's also in a tense right angle with Uranus in your sector of responsibilities and obligations. So if you feel obligated in that business or friendship relationship or that romantic tie, and that's making you feel really quite edgy and maybe creating quite a brittle atmosphere, that could push you through the first week to try to recapture your freedom. But as the month begins, we do also have the Sun in a very dominant position. We have the new moon on the 3rd. And if your life isn't being affected by difficulties around relationships, that new moon definitely helps you to pitch your hopes high. So is there someone influential you need to reach out to? Is there a job or an employment agency that can act as a conduit towards something bigger and better and brighter for you? Because the move of Mars on the 4th and out of that dreamy drifting and enervating square with Neptune brings it into the 8th house. The 8th house is about desire. If you want to improve your lot in terms of what you're earning, Pluto going into 2nd, everyday money, Mars moving into 8, longer term investment, shared resources, can be to do with property, is going to give you a lot of drive in the following 8 weeks. But Mars moving into that area is very much about instant gratification. So if there is somebody that you find quite mesmerizing, Mars can prime that up. But Mars in Cancer is an interesting ingress, because Mars in Cancer is not at its best, it's in its fall, and it can be quite prickly. And Mars in the 8th house can be very blunt and direct. But because the host is about emotion, if you really want to get close to someone, you will have to try to garner a rather careful approach, I feel, because you'll need to go a little bit quicker than they may be ready for. Could actually spoil a potentially promising opportunity in the following 2 months. But we do have, in the second week of this month, an opposition between the Sun and Saturn. And because Saturn was conflicting Jupiter at the start of this month, we know that the Sun coming into the picture means we have a T-square. So as much as the Sun squaring it with Jupiter can make us very optimistic and hopeful, I feel it's important not to over-egg the pudding, particularly if you're trying to impress someone influential. Don't tell them too much. Try to stay as relaxed as you can and let it all flow naturally. And also, it's important to be mindful of not getting into a role that doesn't really work for you in terms of your family life. Perhaps the hours aren't quite right, or maybe it's somewhere outside where you'd feel comfortable working. So those can be scenarios that you do need to consider in week 2. But on the 9th, Mercury returning to Virgo could mean that some information or a contract you've been waiting to come through can finally manifest itself. And that could be a huge relief. In fact, the true picture can emerge by the 11th, when Mercury ends its post-retrograde shadow. Because the Mercury retrograde may only be 21 days, but the whole process is about 9.5 weeks. Because we have the pre-retrograde and the post-retrograde periods, and for the whole time communications aren't necessarily going to flow quite as we'd like. Of course, there are opportunities with Mercury retrogrades to reset, recalibrate and rework situations, and I feel that if you have been working in that way, some good news can emerge at this point. But the 18th, that lunar eclipse, it's very complex because it's the first in the series, as I mentioned. Goes between the 2 signs of Virgo and Pisces. So the first one is Pisces. Pisces is the sign of culmination. We have Neptune coming to the end of its 164-year journey through the entire zodiac, and it's going to move fully into Aries in 2026. It's going to have a brief sojourn into Aries next year. But here, being very, very close to the moon, it makes you hypersensitive. So in terms of your professional interactions, if there is a situation which feels very demanding or perhaps a bit unbending when it comes to some of your emotional needs, the opportunity that you thought was right for you might not be so right for you if it doesn't feel or work for you emotionally as much as the more ambitional side of your nature. But that's the backdrop energy that lasts for 6 months. So any professional opportunities for the next half year, you need to make sure that you feel comfortable with them. But then on the 22nd, it's a wonderful opportunity for you to switch the focus onto your social world, your network, linking with people you feel really comfortable with, mixing and mingling as we have the autumnal equinox. This is a very important part of the year in Western tropical astrology, ushering in Cardinal Quadrant 3, a 13-week period where who you know could be just as important as what you know, Sagittarius. But certainly your enthusiasm and that part of you that can be very friendly, open-minded is going to be emphasized. But ironically, Venus pitches out of that sector and into the sign of Scorpio, where it is detrimented. But Venus in Scorpio for you can actually be an asset, because if you have been struggling all through this month to try to sort out that relationship scenario and you're still not quite sure, you may decide with Venus moving into Scorpio to finally call it quits. But conversely, it could also flag up a time when you start to think about someone from your past, or you feel very nostalgic for a past partner, even if you don't get in touch with them. Equally, there could be someone you meet socially that you really like, but you may not openly share how you feel. Venus in Scorpio can be quite guarded. It's a very committed position for Venus to be in, but the 12th house means that a secret alliance could call out to you. But if you are wanting to build a new future in a brighter way, a way that's friendlier, easier going, and less caught up with politics, I think Venus does point towards thinking about bringing any unsatisfactory relationship to a close. Mercury moves to replace Venus on the 26th, and then we have a cazimi with the Sun on the final day. You could end this month with a celebration. It could be getting together with the people that really matter to you. You may want to follow your favourite sports team. The 11th house can be very much about that too. But the 11th house is also where we want to get in touch with something that goes beyond the physical goals and ambitions that often dominate our lives. It's somewhere that we just feel really sated in terms of a sense of inner bliss, and that can call out to you as this month draws to a close. So look forward to a jolly time as this month comes to a close. Have a great September, Sagittarius. All the best and goodbye. Welcome, Capricorn, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the ascendant, the sun or the moon. I'm going to share some standout details for you to look out for. Then on screen, your event chart right at the start of the month, which provides a lot of illuminating information. Then as the month unfolds, I'll give you all the key influences and exact dates relevant to your sign. Now, if you recall, Capricorn, the mighty but tiny Pluto came into your sign in 2008. It left briefly for 11 weeks in 2023, and since the 21st of January this year, it's also not been in your sign. But as we start this month, Pluto returns for one final visit to you through to November the 19th. I need to unpack that for you because it's very important indeed. We also need to be mindful of your ruler Saturn. Saturn's always influential all of the time, but no more so than this month. We also have on the 3rd of this month a very exciting new moon. And then on the 4th, Mars, the planet of thrust, the planet of desire, moves into your sector of relationships, but for 8 long weeks. This is very rare. Usually Mars takes 6 weeks through each sign. On the 9th, an important piece of information or a communication can come to you that you've been waiting for, and it can be a green light moment. The 18th sees a lunar eclipse, the first in a new series. This one is in the sign of Pisces, which is about everyday communication, but the weaving, shifting, misty energy of Neptune applies to the moon, and that can be complex over the next 6 months. Then on the 22nd, we have the autumnal equinox, which ushers in cardinal quadrant 3, a very important part of the astrological calendar. The next 13 weeks are all about finding balance, but for you, around your professional hopes. There is a more sociable dimension that comes with Venus shifting on the 23rd, but as the month comes to a close, you could be thinking very carefully about the skills you want to learn or the skills you can deploy when it comes to your professional hopes. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. This is very much a community. If you're a returning visitor, thank you again for joining me. All your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to sub to the channel, please do so now and click that bell notification symbol and help the channel to thrive. I'm a consulting astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. You can see how other people have found working closely with me. Finally, my very special and unique personal horoscope offer You can order your year 2025 transit forecast now and get the rest of this year free. 30% off if you get my special package, which includes your life roadmap report. Totally unique to you and will give you searing insights into the patterns that are played out in your life so far, how you can work with these energies better future forwards, and the combination of all this knowledge, tremendous value, gives you lots of information to work off over the next 18 months. See below for more. So on the screen now, Capricorn, you can see your event chart right at the start of the month. And Pluto is still in the sign of Aquarius because it's later on the Monday that it inverses back into your sign. But you can see as we start the month at midnight, it's at 1 minute still in the sign of Aquarius, but in the retrograde. Now, one of the things that Pluto does do as you enter this month is that it forges a very fine link with Venus. This combination of these two planetary influences suggests if you do have a very dynamic connection to someone in a business situation that goes beyond just your technical ability and experience, you seem to have some kind of natural rapport, that can be very telling as you come into this new month. But Pluto inversing into your sign through to the 19th of November, and particularly if you're born right at the end of the sign of Capricorn in the third decan, that really points towards the potential for some extra transformations to play out even yet. But this will be the last time that Pluto will visit your sign. It won't come back in our lifetimes. But also at the start of this month, you can see that Saturn, your ruler, continues its retrograde in house 3. The third house is about quick communications, quick thoughts, can be where we pivot, but the sign of Pisces, which is the host, is a water sign. So if we say things quickly that have some kind of emotional component, but we don't think it through, it can be a mischief maker. So what Saturn's been asking you to do over the last 16 or 17 months since it arrived here is to slow down the way you have quick communications and perhaps be a little bit more measured and thoughtful about saying the things you want to express. Now that could have created, to be honest, a degree of frustration, particularly since the retrograde began, or you may have found that moving around had some unexpected inhibitions. For example, if you have tried to travel somewhere, there may have been a technical issue. You may have even got lost. You may have found that your relationship with neighbours has become more abrasive. It's also possible, third house ruled by neighbours, also possible that things are not quite so sweet with siblings. But one of the things that Saturn can do, and particularly because it's your ruler, you understand this more than any other sign. If we work hard and apply ourselves, it can give us a reward. So you may have started to learn a new subject. You may have imparted skills and knowledge you have to others in a way that they've been very grateful for. So it's not all bad. But as we come into this month, it is still in a right angle with Jupiter, the planet of growth. Saturn is generally about retraction or at least stability. So the two don't really collaborate that well with one another. Now the exact point of tension was on the 19th of August, but they're still within a close enough alignment, 3-degree orb, to make it impactful as you come into this month. And Jupiter's in the part of your situation to do with commitments, obligations, but also your physical health. So if you do enter September feeling a bit below par, one of the things I would suggest you don't do is try to do too much too quickly in order to try to overcompensate that low energy. So for example, you may decide you want to be very virtuous, which is very 6th house, but if you're too virtuous, it could just wear you out before you even get going. So if you are wanting to commit to a new focus around balancing your time and being a bit more careful of how you use your energy, and that could mean saying no to some requests for help at work. So Jupiter can encourage you to find your voice because it's in the sign of Gemini, which is about communication. But also Mars is in this location too. That's very assertive, but that's being squared off by Neptune. So whether it's people immediately around you or the daily grind or just responsibilities and obligations, somehow or another your nervous system could feel suboptimal as you go into this month. But it's not going to last, because although Mars is squared off by Neptune in the early days of this month, once it moves into your opposite sign of Cancer, it's activating a greater strength to engage with life's challenges and ultimately life's headwinds, which we all experience. But Mars in the 7th house can be very assertive. So if there has been someone who's been taking you for granted, I think you'll find your voice from that point on. Also, the new moon, which occurs on the 3rd, is for you in the part of your chart that's to do with freedom. So if you go into this month feeling a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit under-resourced, don't feel you quite have the spark that you want, Pluto moving back to your sign can help you. Saturn squared off with Jupiter is a challenge. Neptune squared off by Mars is a challenge, but the new moon on the 3rd and Mars moving into your 7th can start to see you change the equilibrium of the situation. And remember, there could be somebody quite influential who takes a shine to you, and maybe because you are a little bit more cautious, maybe it is because your natural way of being is to take steady steps forwards instead of being, overly optimistic. That person could actually really appreciate that part of you. So don't be tempted in the early of this part of this month to big yourself up or to try to be too much of a good egg. I don't think that's the right thing for you to do. But there is a very flamboyant square as this month begins between Uranus in your 5th house, where you're dazzling people with some different ideas, surprising yourself at times, I feel. But that's squaring with Mercury in the 8th, initially as we come into the month. When it comes to your resources, I wouldn't be tempted to splash out spontaneously on a big ticket item. Try to hold off if you can. And that new moon, which occurs on the 3rd, also forges a great link to the part of fortune. And a 9th house new moon can be about contracts, so that's promising. Also, the 9th house, very much about independence, adventure and travel. If you've yet to book that vacation, give yourself the permission as you set your intentions on this new moon to give yourself the opportunity to change things up, be more spontaneous. Remember that old saying, Capricorn, variety is the spice of life. But that move of Mercury back to the sign of Virgo on the 9th is also very powerful. If you have been trying to escape a situation, then felt really penned in, perhaps by the physical circumstances, perhaps there was a financial issue that you couldn't leave a job, for example, almost like the 8 of Swords in tarot, maybe you felt encased. There is a chance that that kind of encasing energy could show up in week 2 this month, because the Sun goes opposite your ruler Saturn and they're both squaring up to Jupiter. But you know what actually Saturn is doing is protecting you. And sometimes if things don't go exactly our way, it can actually be to our advantage, because that new moon could tempt you to be almost too buccaneering in your approach. As Mercury comes along to join up, then you can bring more clarity to the discussion, and on the 11th Mercury emerges from its post-retrograde shadow and things will start to fall into place. But we do have that mesmerizing lunar eclipse, the first one in a new polar series between the signs of Virgo and Pisces, which begins on the 18th. This provides a backdrop of energy for the next 6 months. But because it's so close to Neptune, if you are someone who's got expressive ideas to share, so for example, if you're writing a book, or you have your own website or a blog, or you do something creative where you want to convey your message, the shimmering magic of Neptune could be great, particularly if you're using photography or film to illuminate your idea. But in terms of making progress breaking out, breaking through the ninth house energy of the position of the sun, Neptune could drain energy again. So the energy you started to pick up could dissipate. How do you deal with this? Well, I feel, Capricorn, it's by having a very narrow focus. Don't spread yourself too thinly, and you can still make progress and use your enlightened imagination and sensitivity that will come from that eclipse to guide your progress over the next half year. But on the 22nd, it's a major event for us all, the autumnal equinox. The sun returns to the sign of Libra, but for you, it goes to its highest point in the sky. This sun-like position is where you can attract acclaim and recognition, and it can happen for you over the following 13 weeks. Maybe that ninth house energy that was showing up earlier in the month is not just about personal escapism. Maybe you've needed to find a job that actually inspires you and arouses your passion. If things have become too mundane, that's what you're being guided to do. And because this autumnal equinox links so powerfully to Pluto in your sign, that can be a real astral leg up to your future progress. But the 23rd does see Venus move into a more sociable sector, going into Scorpio, deep and passionate. Is there someone in your friendship group who actually is rather intriguing to you? Watch out for their body language. They may not tell you straight away. You may have to wait a little longer for that privilege. But the 26th sees Mercury replacing Venus in Libra. And if you do feel professionally that it's a time to adapt skills and experiences from the past with a course that updates your skills, or you adapt your curriculum vitae and use different slices of your background in a fresh, applied way, a great opportunity to do so as the month comes to a close could see you offered a new role, doing an important presentation, or perhaps applying for a new job in a completely different environment. So September is without doubt a very, very powerful month with Pluto returning to your sign. And because Saturn, your ruler, is so prevalent in that square to Jupiter at the start of the month, in the opposition to the Sun, and with Mars moving into your sector of relating, but also competition. So you're going to gain a lot of authority and a lot of thrust as this month goes on. But the overwhelming theme is to choose your words with care. Have a great September, Capricorn. Take care and goodbye for now. Welcome, Aquarius, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share some standout details with you to begin with, to look out for, but then on screen I'll share your event chart, always hugely important at the start of each month because it provides so much information to guide us. Then as the days unfold, I'll give you the exact influences and timings pertinent to your sign. Now, as we come into this month, Pluto, the mighty Pluto, which has been with you since the 21st of January, is going to inverse out of your sign. But just before it does, it forges an incredibly powerful link to Venus, the planet of love, but also money. I need to share the significance of that with you. Now, as you come into this month, your two ruling planets, as ever, are truly influential, but they're both in conflict, so I need to unpack that. But by the 3rd, we have a new moon. A new moon which is very much to do with shared resources, long-term financial planning, can be to do with investments, pensions, savings, property matters, or shared resources. A new moon is when the sun and the moon combine in unison, and that can be an opportunity to set your intentions around those areas. But on the 4th, Mars makes its way into the sign of Cancer. Cancer is an emotional sign, it's ruled by the moon. Mars, of course, can be more abrasive. What will this mean? Over the following 8 weeks, there's a huge opportunity for you to get fitter, and I'm going to share with you exactly how. The 9th, however, sees Mercury return back to the sign of Virgo, which it rules. If you recall, it's already been here this year, but that's when the retrograde began. Mercury returning to this location suggests if you have been waiting for some news to do with a financial payout, some kind of legacy, perhaps an insurance claim, you will get that information by the 11th when Mercury ends its 9.5 week Mercury retrograde period, which, although it's only in retrograde for 21 days, the pre-retrograde shadow and the post-retrograde shadow still are very important. However, the 18th does see a very powerful lunar eclipse, the first in a new series, and this is in the sign of Pisces, which is about for you your resources, your self-worth and your values. But it's aligned with Neptune, which is a very aquatic, shimmering energy in Pisces, but also your modern ruler, Uranus, provides an electric charge to this event in a very positive way. So this provides a backdrop of energy for the next 6 months. I'll take you through this. The 22nd, however, sees the Sun return to your sister air sign of Libra after an 11-month absence. Libra, of course, is about balance, fairness. It's about communication, like you. It's an air sign, but also ushers in cardinal quadrant 3. Western tropical astrology is divided into 4 13-week sections. This 13-week section for you is about, in some ways, making sure that you feel free, whatever your physical circumstances. And sometimes we can deal with very difficult situations if we feel we're living our life to our higher truth. And that's really what you're being asked to do. But also this can be a time when you become much more excited about the opportunity to travel and be more spontaneous. Venus, the planet of relating, but money, moves into a very prominent part of your chart on the 23rd. Is there going to be a relationship that's set to develop where maybe it's a bit more of an orthodox relationship, and maybe you have to fall back on more the Saturnian side of your nature, but this could be good for you. So some kind of contractual opportunity can really sparkle as this month draws to a close, or you could find yourself learning a new language, an instrument, or perhaps traveling further afield. But one way or another, even if you're still at home, your world can expand hugely as September comes to a close. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please feel welcome to share them. This is very much a community. People chip in. Also, if you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions, as ever, are truly appreciated. Please help my channel to thrive by subbing if you've yet to do so and clicking the bell notification symbol. I'm a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out the testimonials below. I don't change these as they come in, I share as is. See how other people have found working closely with me. Finally, my year 2025 personal horoscope forecast promotion is now running. You can order your transits for next year, but also get the rest of this year free. In my special package, get your Life Roadmap Report plus 30% off. The Life Roadmap Report, all of this is based on your unique birth data, will give you a lot of information to understand the patterns that have played out in your life so far and how you can work with these future forwards. Your transit shows how the planets in the sky are interacting with your nativity. So it's a lot of information, it's great value, and as I say, totally unique to you. Please see the link below for more. So Aquarius on the screen now, we have your event chart at the start of the month. Let's look at Saturn. Saturn has a little bit of a dark reputation, but do you know when Saturn moves over a house cusp in a natal horoscope, very often that signifies a reward if someone has really applied themselves. So whether it's working hard in terms of their physical fitness or health, a job, a talent, a relationship, something good can break. So please don't feel that Saturn is all dark and difficult. But at the start of this month, it is true that Saturn is squaring off the planet of growth. They came into an exact square on the 19th of August, but they're still within touch of one another within 3 degrees. So as you come into this new month, it's probably not the best of times to be too and free and easy with resources. If there is an idea, for example, that calls out to you, or someone's trying to enthuse you with the latest side hustle or get rich quick scheme, approach it with caution. But it doesn't mean to say you shouldn't approach it. But the 5th house, where Jupiter is also about being exuberant, joyful, playful, and romantic. So there could be someone you're drawn to at the start of this month, but whether it's a feasible opportunity or not may be an issue, because Neptune, like Saturn, is in your 2nd house, and maybe your values don't quite align with a person you really fancy, because Neptune's squaring up to Mars as we go into this new month. That can create a great sense of unreality, and Neptune in the 2nd house can also tempt us towards things that aren't necessarily good for us, whether it's a bit too much sugar, those gooey calorific goodies that I find so hard to resist, or it is maybe someone who's very coquettish and sultry, 2nd house, very sensual. Is there someone that we're just drawn towards because their sexual chemistry is so strong? Mars in the 5th house. So your 2nd house of keeping it real and sticking with what makes you who you are in terms of your self-worth and values is conflicted by a more risk-taking side of your nature. Now, how will you pick your way through this? Because Uranus, your modern ruler, is also in a clash at the start of this month with Mercury, the planet of communication, which is in your sector of relating. So if you can see on the chart wheel, you have the part of fortune, the moon and Mercury all in your 7th house. So how you relate to people, that could be a big part of what you're searching for as you come into this month. But Mercury square with Uranus is quite erratic. Maybe there's someone that you really like and the physical constraints might not be practical. Maybe they live a little bit too far away from you. Maybe your personal situation means that in terms of childcare or perhaps your work, it isn't quite as free for you to be available to link with that person. But there could therefore, with these 3 difficult influences, these 3 squares, there could be the tendency at the start of this month to feel that things aren't going in your direction. But I want to reassure you, because Venus is in the part of your chart, Venus is about money, but it's also about relationships, that's to do with your higher truth. It's also in your sister air sign of Libra, and Venus is domiciled here, so it's a brilliant place for Venus to be. So it links back to Pluto. So Pluto is about transformations. The link with Venus can amplify your understanding at a spiritual level of who can be good for you or not. The key is whether you will listen to that or be drawn towards these earthly temptations. And then Pluto inverses back into Capricorn. If you did have a difficult time of it since 2008 in terms of a lot of very deep transformations, maybe you've become unattached to people who in the past were a massive part of your situation, it really wouldn't be a surprise. And of course, Uranus being in the 4th house in Taurus, where it's not at its best, that was seeded in May 2018 with a square that was just outside of Aquarius, and then Mars moved into Aquarius, and Mars and Uranus were having a right dust up in the spring and summer of 2018. And since then, your emotional life may have been somewhat unstable or at least changeable. So what happens with Pluto returning into Capricorn? It's an opportunity, a window, a celestial window of opportunity through to the 19th of November to explore if there is any outstanding emotional, psychological or subconscious issues that do need to be resolved. Now, there are so many apps out there these days which help us to understand our behaviour, whether it is to do with perhaps being OCD, or perhaps to do with attention deficit, or if you had a difficult childhood, is that completely resolved? Or, of course, there's an opportunity to go online and watch lots of self-help videos, or download self-help manuals, or even talk to someone directly. So if you still feel there's something that's outstanding from your past that you want to explore, see that you can through to the 19th of November, and see that as being a magnificent thing you can do in terms of your personal development. But on the 3rd, interestingly, that new moon can call out to the more psychological part of your nature, because the 8th house is where we can be most devoted and most invested, most attached, but it's also the part of the circuit through the sky where the sun can unattach us from something that perhaps has come to its end. So very much a Plutonian vibe to that new moon. But if you are someone who wants to raise some money for a business idea that you've got, perhaps sort out some insurance planning or life policy planning for your future, a great time to do so on the back of that particular new moon. But Mars moving on the 4th, I told you before, this could be great for your physical vitality. And it's going to be in your 6th house through to the 4th of November. And to be honest, this is really rare, because usually Mars takes 6 weeks to go through each sign. It's going to be going into the sign of Leo, and then in December it goes into a retrograde, and that's why we've got this extended period of time in Cancer. But Mars doesn't like being in Cancer. It's in its 4. Mars is very robust, and the sign of Cancer is more touchy-feely, it's emotional, but it can also be a bit defensive with Mars there. So how will this play out for you? Well, in the 6th house, that can be very much to do with our physical vitality, but also it can be to do with where we can be virtuous. So if you do want to change a number of small but important details, Mars will give you the thrust, determination and sticking power to really change something very positively. So if you are wanting to really examine what you're eating, drinking, very carefully, if you're thinking about a job that's not working for you and you're determined to change it, your drive and passion can be enormous over the next 2 months. But it is true that in week 2, the Sun in Virgo does go face to face with your ruler, your traditional ruler Saturn in Pisces. If there is an equation in your situation where you're finding it hard to get what you feel you're worth, or you may feel that someone you're connected to is cold, detached, even all the way to be mean, it could really show up at this time. I feel that once Mercury returns to Virgo on the 9th, it does give you a chance to cut through and really understand what this might be about. And one of the things I would say is that even if things feel tense in that week 2, do try to keep the lines of communication open. And then you may find you get what you want. It becomes clear by the 11th when Mercury leaves the end of its 9.5-week journey through its whole retrograde season. The retrograde takes 21 days, of course, but it's the pre and post retrograde shadows that fill out the whole 9.5-week period. So something that you started to really set your sights on all the way back then can really come to a point of culmination, which is exciting. But the lunar eclipse, which occurs on the 18th, is complex because the shimmering link between the moon and Neptune in your 2nd house can arouse within you the most compassionate part of your nature. Have you found since 2012, Aquarius, that you've become much more conscious of those who have less? Because if you have, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. But maybe what Saturn's been doing over the last 17 months is making you a little bit more aware of perhaps where you've given slightly too much. Not because it wasn't a good thing to do, but we can't pour from an empty jug. So whether it's emotional support or whether it's financial support to a good cause, you could be tempted towards those good acts more over the next 6 months. But you need to keep things in balance between the ins and outs of your overall situation. But then on the 22nd, we have a victorious moment for you, I feel, because we have the autumnal equinox and the Sun returns to your sister air sign of Libra, which, like you, is very much about communication. but it forges a brilliant link with Pluto just as it arrives. Something's moving for you. Greater knowledge and information are coming your way. You're expanding your thinking hugely. Believe me, you really are. And then that notable person can take quite a shine to you on the 23rd. Your ability to cultivate good contacts is definitely blessed in the weeks following that. But generally speaking, as the month comes to a close, I think there's going to be a lot of excitement. You may want to do something completely off the cuff. Now you have a bit of a inner tension going on in your sign. It is a duality. There's part of you, particularly if you're early born Aquarius, that likes to stick and likes a degree of traditionality. You're a fixed sign, so continuity around relationships, interests, even jobs can see you holding on to something. Whereas your more progressive modern ruler Uranus is prompting and pushing you all the time to dare to be different, to dazzle people. But that can't always be an easy balance. So as you come to the end of this month, I think the part of your nature that you want to demonstrate, whatever suits you in the most comfortable way, you can do it, and you can dazzle people with your ideas, because at the end of the day, that's when you're at your best, when you're chatting to people you find inspirational. If you can head off somewhere, whether it's for some sunshine or whether it's for some skiing if you're down south, it'd be a great opportunity to break out and have a sense of freedom. But if that's not possible because of your physical circumstances, you can really surprise yourself by how much you can learn as this month comes to a close, but also over the next couple of months as you really surf the energy of that awesome autumnal equinox. Have a great September, Aquarius. Take care and goodbye. Welcome, Pisces, to your in-depth monthly horoscope for September 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. I'm going to share with you first of all some standout details to look out for, but please stay with me. Then on screen I'll share your event chart right at the start of the month. That always provides a lot of powerful information to guide us. As the days unfold and the influences change, I'll outline all of those and the exact timings. As ever, as we go into the new month, we do need to be mindful of your two ruling planets. Your traditional ruler is Jupiter, and your more modern ruler, Neptune, very much the aquatic part of the duo, are both very much in the mix as we come into September. But also Pluto, the planet of truth and transformation and consequences, inverts back into a part of your situation that's very future orientated. Also to do with your network, your alliances, but also your higher purpose. And it's there through to November the 19th. We've also got on the 3rd a new moon in your opposite sign. That really gives you a platform to set your intentions around relationships. So I'm excited to share that with you. But even more perhaps on the 4th, Mars, the planet of desire, moves into a very romantic part of your chart for 8 long weeks. That's very unusual. It's usually 6 and gives you an awesome opportunity to showcase yourself in a more dynamic way. But we do have in week 2 a tension between Saturn in your sign, which perhaps has been cramping your style somewhat since March 2023, and the Sun. So I need to explain the delicacy of that. But on the 9th, Mercury moves back into your sector of relating, and if things have felt brittle whilst it's been reversing back in Leo, then gone forwards from the 28th of August, now you get an opportunity to really get those lines of communication working much more clearly. The 11th gives you even more evidence of things improving in that regard. Now week 3 of this month sees an incredibly sparkling link between Uranus, the planet of change, and the Sun in your 7th house of relating. You could encounter someone completely different during that time, and it's important to try to be open to possibilities. Equally, in an existing relationship, you may want to bring some refreshment to things, but the lunar eclipse, which occurs in your sign on the 18th, is the first in a brand new series. It provides a backdrop of energy for the next 6 months, but critically, it's very close to Neptune. Now, Neptune is a very spiritual influence, but it can also be a very sensitive one. Having the Moon and Neptune so closely together, but in opposition to the Sun in your sector of relating, suggests that if there is a tie, an involvement, a partnership which is not working so well, this is something we need to take great care exploring. But the 22nd sees the autumnal equinox. The Sun dives deep. You don your proverbial detective's mat, turn up your collar. You want to understand not just what people are saying, but what they really mean, the subtext. This also ushers in the 3rd cardinal quadrant of the year. Western tropical astrology has 4 quarters of 13 weeks. This 13-week period could be good for business, could be good for property, could be good for evolving your psychological understanding, but it will take some work, some investment of energy. But on the 23rd, Venus moves into your sister water sign of Scorpio. Venus is very, very passionate here, but for you this is house 9. If there have been some signals that you've been finding it difficult to decipher, Venus will help you. But as the month draws to a close, it's a very business-like end to September, but terrific if you are trying to transact something, start a new enterprise, raise finance for something that you're excited about, whether it's an extension or a new enterprise. Please stay with me for more. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you are new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. If you have any thoughts, please feel very welcome to share them. This is very much a community. Also, if you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for all your support. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it thrive by clicking that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. I'm a consulting astrologer. If you'd like to talk to me one-to-one, please check out other people's experience by looking at my testimonials below. Finally, if you'd like to take advantage of my very special year 2025 transit forecast, you can get the rest of this year free if you order now, plus in my special package of 30% off your life roadmap report. This will give you searing insights into the patterns that are played out in your life so far, and a combination of the two is fantastic value and really will help to guide your moves over the next 18 months. Please see below for more. So Pisces, on the screen now, I'm sharing your event chart right at the start of the month. So let's first of all take a look at your 2 rulers. Neptune, right on the last degree in the sign of Pisces, the anaretic degree, is in an opposition with Venus. Now Venus is in your 8th house. That can be where we can be devoted in a romantic context, but it also can be where we can be invested. But Neptune creates a shimmering mirage. So if you are attracted to someone in a big way and you are finding it difficult to get the clarity, what you can do, ironically, is use the energy of Pluto, because as the month begins, it is just in Aquarius, in its link to Venus, to decipher what's really what. Also, Mars is in the part of your situation to do with your more emotional desires, and that's T-squaring the position of Neptune and Venus. So Neptune at the start of this month is asking you to be very realistic about resources, but also matters of intimacy. Now Jupiter, like Mars, is in your 4th house. So I feel over August it was making you perhaps more emotional about where you live, who you live with, and how. And perhaps created a degree of frustration if things weren't moving in terms of fulfilling your hopes in those regards. And of course, on the 19th of August, Saturn in your sign squared up exactly with Jupiter, but they're still broadly in a square as we go into this month. So both Saturn in terms of impacting on your physical energy can make your physical energy a bit lower, but anything to do with things that aren't quite right at home, you could be feeling that at the start of this month. Whereas Neptune, it's more about relationships or money, and it could be linked to a property matter if you're still waiting to get some clarity. However, Pluto returning to the sign of Capricorn later on the 1st of this month, is an opportunity to actually get in contact with what you really want from your long-term future. Because since the 21st of January, as it's trawled through the sign of Aquarius, you may have actually gained a lot of psychological insights, but Pluto moving back to house 11 can give you more desire, because Pluto can be about desire, to actually use your personal toolkit of experience by building your connections or working with people you know to try to take those hopes forwards. But on the 3rd, as I mentioned in my introduction, we do have that new moon. The annual Virgo new moon for you is an opportunity to set your intentions about what you want about relationships. But I think because of that confusing opposition between Neptune and Venus at the start of this month, it's also important to be mindful of what another person may expect of you. Because the best of relationships understand that it's not one-way traffic. It is give and take. And the new moon in the 7th house can be really good for that. People who have the moon in the 7th house of a natal chart, or where we put two charts together between two people, we've got an overlay and one person's moon is in the 7th house of the other person, that can be a very constructive and helpful thing. But there are some challenges with it. The moon in the 7th house can see people be almost too good at people pleasing and not so good at setting their boundaries. So is that something you need to think about in the early part of this month? Because although Mars moves into that incredibly dynamic location on the 4th for 8 weeks, which can do wonders for your sense of attractiveness, you could find yourself wanting to dance more, go out more, socialise and interact more. If you are single and you'd like to meet someone, Mars here can certainly spark you up in a big way. But as the Sun goes face to face with Saturn in your sign in week 2, if there is an imbalance in a relationship, whether you're giving too much or you feel that perhaps you're not getting enough, that can be something that really flags up for you. But on the 9th, as Mercury rewinds back into the sign of Virgo, some of the brittle tensions that may have been more to the fore recently can make way. Maybe someone's going to let you know in their own way how they see a situation. It might not be exactly as you do, but at least they're reaching into your position. Because the best relationships is about mutual understanding. It doesn't mean to say we have to agree. It's about seeing that someone else can see it differently and being okay with that. So I feel by the 11th and Mercury emerging from its post-retrograde shadow, something that's been really frustrating you about a relationship can at least be clarified. But the complications that can be caused by the lunar eclipse in your sign on the 18th are quite strong, because it's so supercharged by the energy of Neptune. Neptune and the moon together is a very sensitive influence, but it also means that your psychic powers are supercharged. And if there is still something around a relationship, a connection, or even a contract that you're not quite sure about, do trust your instincts, because one of the things that we can quite easily do is we overthink things, which is very Virgoan in a way, and don't listen to our hunches, which is very Piscean. So over the next 6 months around relationships, because that's how long this lunar eclipse is going to last for, don't ignore that sixth sense, because it won't fail you. Because often when we get involved with the wrong person, we look back on it in latter times, we can admit that, you know, there was something there that I didn't quite take note of because I really liked them and they were such great company to be with. You know, I really fancied them, but there was that little bell ringing in the back of our minds. Or the same with a job, you know, it was a really well-paid job, but I had a little bit of a feeling in the back of my mind that I didn't like the boss. We all do it because in some ways the logical part of our brains wants to meet our needs, which could be for sex, it can be for money, it can be for security and stability. And the instinctive part of our nature, which you're very strong on, is the part that sometimes people will in some ways mock. Bit like astrology. Well, why does astrology work? Well, those that really are into astrology know astrology works. Jonathan Cainer once famously said, which was very, very clever actually, he said, I don't know how my engine works in my car, but I know how to drive the car, or something to that, or some words to that effect, which I thought was very, very smart, because we don't entirely understand. We know it's something to do with gravitational pull, but that's what you could be faced with over the next 6 months. So if you do reach a point of clarity at the heart of this month with Mercury emerging from its post-retrograde shadow, all's well and good. But if you're still caught up in something that's captivating, has a great degree of mystique, but still you're utterly confused about that person or that situation, try to tune into your hunches, because once we have the autumnal equinox on the 22nd, that's your chance to really decipher what's truly meant. And that means understanding not necessarily what people are saying, but where they're coming from. And that in itself is quite a skill. The 23rd also, with Venus moving into the sign of Scorpio, can be another opportunity to get in touch with your truth. So we can hear what people say, we can want to give them the benefit of doubt. We know that no relationship is perfect, but somewhere deep within us we get a hunch for where we should stay in or not stay in. Let that guide you this month and also over the next 6 months from the time of that lunar eclipse. But as this month draws to a close, if you have been waiting for some news on a financial matter, maybe some investment, maybe a payout on a claim, perhaps something to do with a legacy or an inheritance, it could be good news on the very last day of this month as we have a Mercury cazimi. But it's a Mercury cazimi where Mercury's in its forward motion, so it's a superior conjunction, and the magnificence of the Sun in Libra, which of course is very much about balance. Technically the Sun is not at its best in Libra, it's a 4 because the Sun is exalted in Aries, so it's the opposite of Aries. And perhaps that's because Libran energy can be a little bit passive in some ways, but once a Libran is stirred, the cardinality, the more firmer energies can come out, rather more like the opposite sign of Aries. But there may be something towards the end of this month that you can get an accord on, you know, and it could be something that gives you a lot of satisfaction to finally push something over the line. Have a great September, Pisces. Thank you so much for joining me. All the best and goodbye.